What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be doing the top 100 greatest NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time, 2026 edition. We'll go from number 100 to number 1, and we also have an honorable mention section of drivers who just missed out on the list for 2026. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. In the number 100 position, I have Glenn Wood. Glenn Wood picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. He had 22 top 5s, 34 top 10s, and 1,636 laps led in his short Cup Series career. Glenn Wood had a decent career, especially in the early days of the sport in the early 1950s when he did have a lot of races. One of the early drivers that stood out during that time. Also is one of the co-owners of the Wood Brothers, a team that had some pretty decent success in the early stages of that team's success when they, of course, won a lot of races in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s on top of that. He had a pretty solid career in general. Didn't run a lot of races, only ran around like 50 or 60 races in his career, but to have 4 wins, only about 105 drivers I could say they've done that. He's had a pretty solid career and sits 100th on the list. In the 99th position, I have Michael Waltrip. Michael Waltrip picked up 4 wins in his NASCAR Cup Series career, had 41 top 5s, had 133 top 10s, led 1,415 laps, and has 2 Daytona 500 wins in 2001 and 2003. Michael Waltrip was one of the greatest Super Speedway racers in NASCAR Cup history. All of his Cup Series wins coming as Super Speedways, but Michael Waltrip was a better driver than just being a Super Speedway driver. Back in 2003, Michael Waltrip was actually competing for the top 5 of points throughout the year, and until the second half of the season, one of the most consistent drivers in the field. He also had some really standout runs at other races. The 1991 Trans-South 500, a race that was won by another driver. He was the guy who dominated that race. Had it not been for some bad strategy, it's very likely Michael Waltrip is able to pick up the win in that event. Also nearly won the Daytona 500 in 1992 with Bahari Racing. Also won the All-Star race for Wood Brothers, and I think he had some decent success in Cup. While Michael Waltrip didn't have like the most illustrious career compared to even his brother Darrell, he had a solid career in general. He did some good things in the sport, still involved in the sport to this day, and Michael Waltrip had a solid career in NASCAR. In the number 98 position, I have Bob Flock. Bob Flock picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 11 top 5s, 18 top 10s, and led 679 laps in Cup Series competition. Bob Flock, one of the Flock brothers, with one of the most successful early families in the history of the sport. He was the least successful of the Flock family, but it wasn't like Bob Flock was a slouch or nothing. He had a lot of success in the early 50s of the sport and was one of the pioneers and legends, and also I think won some races at Daytona, and I think won some sports and races back in the day as well. He had some pretty solid numbers, put together some really strong runs. Didn't run a massive amount of races in his career. I think he retired early to help the Flock family in a pretty big way, but he picked up 4 career NASCAR Cup Series wins and has some decent success in the sport, which is why I have him as high as I have on the list. He will be sitting 98th because he did have some solid success in NASCAR Cup competition. In the number 97 position, I have Herschel McGriff. He is the first NASCAR Hall of Famer on this list, I believe, with 4 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, 17 top 5s, 31 top 10s, and led 609 laps in his Cup Series career. All 4 of Herschel McGriff's wins came in 1954. But Herschel McGriff had one of the most illustrious careers in motorsports. He was a Winston West Series champion back in the late 1970s, and he's also someone who raced up until not that long ago in the ARCA West Series back around 2018 to 2019 at around the age of 93 to 94 years old, around that point in his early 90s. The oldest drivers are a NASCAR sanctioned race and ARCA sanctioned event as well. Herschel McGriff had some really good runs in the 70s and 80s in the sport, made a lot of starts in his racing career, had some decent success, did a pretty good thing, ran a lot of the early days, made his debut in 1950, made his last start nearly half a century later in 1992, and was able to put together some good numbers in his career and did some great things in the sport, especially in the 1950s. In the number 96 position, we have Parnelli Jones. Parnelli Jones picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 6 top 5s, 11 top 10s, and led 614 laps in NASCAR Cup Series competition. The crazy thing is Parnelli Jones only had around 18 or 19 starts, so nearly in 2/3 of the starts that Parnelli Jones made in his Cup career, he nearly scored a top 10, and 1/3 of the starts nearly scored a top 5 in 1/3 of each of those starts. Parnelli Jones is successful in other motorsports, once in racing rally, I'm pretty sure. Also, of course, is a winner of the Indianapolis 500, one of the few drivers who won the Indy 500 who is on this list, and Parnelli Jones had a very illustrious career in sports car racing as well, where his son PJ Jones and his grandson Jagger Jones have had success in sports car racing over the years, and I think Parnelli Jones is someone that is respected by many in the motorsports industry. He's one of the pioneers, also won some races up in California over the years. Parnelli Jones had a pretty solid racing career and a really strong racing resume, and that's why he's on the list, because he had a pretty good career in motorsports in general. In the number 95 position, I have Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon is still active. He has 6 career NASCAR Cup Series wins up to this point, has 24 top 5s, 87 top 10s, has led 536 laps in Cup competition, won the 2018 Daytona 500 and the 2017 Coca-Cola 600, which was the first career NASCAR Cup Series victory. Now, some don't respect Austin Dillon that much, and while I don't think Austin Dillon has done amazing in the 3-car over the years, I think he gets a lot of disrespect. Remind you, many of those years up until about a few years ago, Austin Dillon was a top 15, top 20 threat on a week-by-week basis, and his consistency led him making the chase, I believe, around 2021. And he was pretty good in 2022 even before he got the win, as he's sitting in the top 15 in points. The reason the last couple years have not gone so well for Austin Dillon is because of the fact that Rich Strolls Racing as a whole and organization has really struggled in a big way. He's also champ drivers, won the O'Reilly Series Championship in 2013 and won the Craftsman Truck Championship in 2011. He could be one of the first driver ever, if things go well, to become the first driver to win a championship in all 3 series. Austin Dillon is a driver that should get a little more respect. Has it been great the last few years? No, but he's had some decent runs here and there. Has had some decent success, and Austin Dillon has a chance to continue growing. He will likely be back next year in the 3-car, but he sits 95th on the list. In the number 94 position, we have Morgan Shepherd. Morgan Shepherd picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 63 top 5s, 168 top 10s, and led 2,155 laps. Morgan Shepherd has a very long career in the sport. He is one of the oldest drivers to pick up his first career win, that being in 1981 at Martinsville Speedway, and his other 3 NASCAR Cup Series wins came at one track, that being Atlanta Motor Speedway. Picked up a win there in 1986, also won there, I believe, in 1993, and got a win, I believe, around 1990, around that point. Morgan Shepherd was very strong at Atlanta Motor Speedway. That was his best track without question, one with about more organization, but he's also had a pretty solid team for years in the sport, and he was able to be an outside championship contender in the early 1990s, in his early 50s. There's not many drivers nowadays that could say that in the last 30 years, for that matter, who've been able to be a championship contender when they're over the age of 50. It's very rare at this point. Morgan had a really good career, one of the nicest guys from what I know in the industry, legend of the sport, one of the best to ever race, is independent near the end of his career, had a solid career, and was a good driver in the 80s and 90s, a German driver for many years, but he was able to get good opportunities and also had a chance to win with the Wood Brothers. On top of that, got a win with the Wood Brothers at one point. He had a pretty solid career in NASCAR Cup competition. In the number 93 position, we have Joe Nemechek. Joe Nemechek picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 18 top 5s, has 62 top 10s, and led 1,246 laps. Joe Nemechek's first win came in 1999 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, then got a pretty big upset in 2001 for Andy Petrie Racing at Rockingham Speedway. Then he won in 2003 in a rain-delayed race that ended early at Richmond, and then in 2004 picked up the win in a great shootout against Ricky Rudd at the race at Kansas in the fall of 2004. Actually swept the weekend as he won the O'Reilly race the prior day. Joe Nemechek is someone that I don't think gets a lot of credit for how solid of a race car driver he was. He won the O'Reilly Championship back in 1992, but was never really in the best equipment in his racing career. I know the 25 was a decent car, but the 25 car was the 4th car at Hendrick Motorsports. He had some issues, of course, at MB2. Had a chance to win a few races with the MB2 Motorsports team before they got picked up by Bobby Ginn back in the mid-2000s. Joe Nemechek was a solid driver, had a lot of success. His last one came in 2004 NASCAR across the board. His son, of course, racing in the Cup Series at Assay, still looking for his first career win. But I think Joe Nemechek is overall a solid driver, had a lot of success in the O'Reilly Series, and had some pretty good success in the Cup Series as well. In the number 92 position, we have Pete Hamilton. Pete Hamilton picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 26 top 5s, 33 top 10s, and led 621 laps. He also won the 1970 Daytona 500, which I believe was either his first or second career NASCAR Cup Series win. And he won that race with Petty Enterprises and a second Petty Enterprises car during that time. Pete Hamilton had a lot of success in the early 70s with the Petty Enterprises organization. Most of his success came with that team and organization. Also won, I think, a race at Talladega in the early 1970s as well. He was someone who had a lot of fans, had a ton of success in the early 70s of the sport, a driver that many thought was going to win a lot more races during his time because of how much talent and how much potential he had. He wasn't able to win like many races, but he was able to have success, do some great things in the sport in the early 70s, and able to win 4 races. I think that's a strong career and a pretty solid career, having a Daytona 500, which it's more difficult to win the Daytona 500 back then than it is now. So to win the 500 back then, congrats to him on that. He had a pretty good career in Cup competition. In the number 91 position, we have Charlie Glotzback. Charlie Glotzback picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 38 top 5s, 50 top 10s, and led 1,826 laps. Charlie Glotzback picked up wins in the late 1960s and actually was racing in NASCAR Cup competition up until around 1992 or 1993 when he actually tried to make a comeback in the late 80s and the early 90s and had a couple starts, I believe, in the 80s and 90s. Charlie Glotzback, most of his success came, like I said, in the late 60s. I think he had an outside chance and opportunity to win a championship during that time. Didn't get a championship, but I think he also won some races in the convertible series at the time, and he also had some success in motorsports outside of that. His racing career came to an end after a crash in 2010, where he basically had some injuries from a crash that happened during the Legends race at Bristol back in 2010 after Justin Allgaier picked up his first career win in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at that time. He had a pretty solid career in the 60s and put together some great runs and was able to pick up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 90 position, we have Ralph Moody. Ralph Moody picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 18 top 5s, 27 top 10s, and led 412 laps in the NASCAR Cup Series. Ralph Moody was not only a very solid race car driver in his day, but was also part of the Holman Moody organization and really helped a lot of things when it came to building cars, which is why he's been eligible for the NASCAR Hall of Fame for many, many years. He built a lot of really good cars, had some really strong drivers like Fred Lorenzen over the years, but was a really good driver in his own right in the early 1950s and the late 1950s. Won some big races in his time. I think he won a race at Daytona. Had some solid racing stuff. Had a pretty good racing background on top of that. Was able to get 5 wins, which only around 90 drivers have ever done that at this point. Was really good in the early 1950s and that. And I think he had a pretty good career, especially as one of the early pioneers of racing and as part of the motorsports world as well. In the number 89 position, we have Ken Schrader. Ken Schrader picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. Has 64 top 5s, had 184 top 10s, and led 2,489 laps led. He did not win any major crown jewel events in his career, but came very close to winning the 1989 Daytona 500. As while Darrell Waltrip won the 500, Ken Schrader had the best car in that race. Had it not been for field strategy, Ken Schrader would have been able to get to the Daytona 500. Ken Schrader was really strong in the late 80s and early 90s with Hendrick Motorsports. He finished third in the championship in 1991, and he had a pretty solid career in NASCAR competition. Also picked up a win in the O'Reilly Series, I believe, in the late 1990s as well. And it continues to this day actually be racing at tracks like I-55. And actually, I believe, won a race at Toledo not too long ago and was school bus, I'm pretty sure. So while Ken Schrader did a lot in his motorsports career, had a lot of success, did great things at Hendrick, didn't have a great time with the Woodburns at the end of his career, but he had some great runs with teams like Beth and Morgenthau's organization with the BAM Racing team. And on top of that, almost won with the Andy Petrie Racing team in the late 1990s. He had a pretty good career in motorsports across the board. Not successful in NASCAR Cup competition, but successful in ARCA and successful in a lot of different motorsports in NASCAR history. In the number 88 position, we have Bobby Hamilton. Bobby Hamilton picked up 4 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 20 top 5s, 67 top 10s, and led 2,031 laps in Cup competition. Bobby Hamilton, of course, was kind of a late starter. He did not make his NASCAR Cup debut to around 1990 to 1991. He was part of getting the opportunity to do the Days of Thunder stuff when Rick Hendrick and them were getting set up for Days of Thunder originally back in 1990. He also won some big races, though. Won at Martinsville in 1998. Of course, won at Talladega in 2001. Then, of course, won some races in the late 90s. Got a win with Richard Petty's team, the first win for the 43 since Richard retired after 1992. Got the win at Rockingham as well around 1997. Bobby Hamilton, someone that doesn't get the respect. He's, of course, a Truck Series champion in 2004. Has some pretty solid success in Cup Series competition with teams like Andy Petrie. Was never on a top-level organization, but did some great things and had some solid success in Cup and the Truck Series as well. In the number 87 position, we have Jeremy Mayfield. Jeremy Mayfield picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 48 top 5s, had 96 top 10s, and led 2,451 laps in Cup Series competition. Jeremy Mayfield's a driver that burst on the scene in the mid to late 1990s. His first one came in 1998 with a collaboration with Penske and Michael Kranafis's organization after 37 car was absorbed into the Penske group in 1998. Got to win at Pocono. Was actually a points leader in the early portion of 1998, but people forget because Jeff Gordon and Mark Martin were so dominant. Then in 2000, picked up a win at Auto Club and nearly won at Richmond during that year. Got a win at Pocono in 2000. Then, of course, he picked up win at Everham in 2004 and won in 2005. His career would come to an end, unfortunately, at 2009 due to some things that I would call BS. NASCAR kind of screwed Jeremy Mayfield in a really big way, and yeah, he probably wasn't going to win a lot more because the team was struggling as bad as it was that he opened up. I think there's a lot of things that went wrong, and I think he got screwed a lot. I think Jeremy's a better driver than what he showed, and I think Jeremy had a pretty solid career, all things considered, with everything that happened. In the number 86 position, we have Tiny Lund. Tiny Lund picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 54 top 5s, 119 top 10s, led 1,565 laps, and won the 1963 Daytona 500. Marvin Panch originally was supposed to be the driver of that Daytona 500. I believe Marvin Panch got injured right during Speed Weeks, I'm pretty sure, and Tiny Lund was called up to drive the Wood Brothers car during that time. Tiny Lund had a lot of success in the 60s. He was reserve drive for drivers like Richard Petty, and he had some pretty big wins in his racing career. His, unfortunately, career came to an end after, I believe, a heart attack, I'm pretty sure. And he had a pretty good career in motorsports in general in the 60s and the early 70s. And I think he could have won more given better opportunities with his age. Still a pretty solid driver in his own right. Picking up 5 wins, I think that's a pretty good career. And again, winning the Daytona 500 back then, it was much more difficult than it is now. So to win the 500 in 1963, technically as a reserve driver, pretty impressive. Had a pretty strong and good NASCAR Cup career. In the number 85 position, we have Dave Marcus. Dave Marcus picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 94 top 5s, had 222 top 10s, and led 2,699 laps. Dave Marcus, most of his career, was a journeyman driver. He didn't go out and contend for championships much of his career, but Dave Marcus had a lot of success from the late 1960s and early 1970s up until the early 1980s. Now, he would be part of Richard Childress's organization, helping develop their stuff, help with a lot of the IROC stuff in the 1980s, but mainly a lot of his career was doing his own thing. He holds the record for the most Daytona 500 starts consecutively in a row and most Daytona 500 starts in NASCAR Cup Series history. Dave Marcus, someone that many in Wisconsin respect, had a pretty good career, drove the 71 car, which was driven by Bobby Isaac, who we'll be getting to a little bit later in today's video. But Dave Marcus is really successful in the Midwest, had a lot of strong success, and was able to put together a really strong career in the 1970s and the early 1980s as well. In the number 84 position, we have Dan Gurney. Dan Gurney picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 8 top 5s and 10 top 10s, and only led 696 laps. Despite this, Dan Gurney did this in just 16 starts. Now, most of his success came on one track, Riverside Speedway, in the early 1960s. Dan Gurney, of course, is one of the few Formula One drivers, and I believe actually the only Formula One driver to win on this list. Dan Gurney, of course, had a lot of success across motorsports, not just on the NASCAR side. He nearly won the Indy 500 many years ago. He's won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Of course, he won a lot of big races in his motorsports career. To have 5 Cup wins in just 16 starts is one of the best winning percentages I think we've seen in NASCAR Cup history. Dan Gurney, one of the greatest NASCAR drivers, but also one of the best motorsports drivers in history. Had a great and solid career and sits 84th all time with how successful he was in motorsports throughout his career. In the number 83 position, we have Ward Burton. Ward Burton picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 24 top 5s, 82 top 10s, led 1,916 laps, won the 2002 Daytona 500 with the Bill Davis organization, and won the 2001 Southern 500 as well. While Ward Burton did not win a lot of races in his career, he won a lot of big races. The first year he goes to Bill Davis Racing in 1995, he wins at Rockingham. Doesn't win a second race until the spring race at Darlington in 2000. Then in 2001, wins Southern 500, and then in 2002, he wins 2 races at New Hampshire and the Daytona 500. Warburton was historically very good at tracks that were very, very difficult to get around, like Rockingham and Darlington. The Byrne family is very good at tracks like this. Warburton, of course, I believe nearly won the O'Reilly Championship in the early 1990s, and I think if Warburton had been given better opportunities like Hendrick, which was rumored at one point he was going to go 2 years ago, I think he would have had a lot more success than he ended up having in his Cup Series career. To have 5 wins is still pretty good. I think Ward deserved better. He had a lot of opportunities. He could have gone to Roush many years ago. We found out in a video that came out recently in the mid-90s. He was offered that ride before Jeff Byrne got offered that ride. Warburton had a pretty good career, though, and got 5 wins in Cup competition. In the number 82 position, we have Alan Kulwicki. Alan Kulwicki picked up 5 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, won the 1992 NASCAR Cup Series Championship, had 38 top 5s, had 75 top 10s, and led 2,686 laps. Alan Kulwicki's first win came in 1988 at Phoenix, then picked up a win in 1991 and had 2 or 3 wins in 1992. Unfortunately, Alan Kulwicki was killed in a plane crash in 1993 after winning the championship, which was one of the big upsets championship-wise, as he was 4th or 5th in the points with just around 4 or 5 races to go in the season. We all thought Davey Allison or even other drivers like Bill Elliott were going to win the championship that year. But Alan Kulwicki didn't give up and persevere. And what's impressive about Kulwicki is he did this as an owner driver. There were teams like Junior Johnson that were very interested in bringing Alan Kulwicki in. And he did everything on his own. It's very rare that owner drivers had success. Other drivers would try and fail. The thing that he did was so impressive in his career. Had some great people like Tony Gibson over the years. Had some great crew chiefs that really helped him, like Paul Andrews, who helped win the championship in 1992. And I think that Alan Kulwicki is someone that deserves a lot of credit. Now, I won't put him any higher because I'm not sure if he won a lot more races. The 17 was struggling after the 1992 season, going 93. They were struggling a bit. I'm not sure if they would have had a lot more success. So I think 82 is a rightful place for Alan Kulwicki at this time. In the number 81 position, we have Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher is still active this day with 6 career NASCAR Cup Series wins with 32 top 5s, 96 top 10s, and has led 936 laps in his Cup Series career. Chris Buescher is a driver that has been very solid and very steady. One of the most consistent and clean drivers on the track on a week-by-week basis. There were teams that are very interested in Buescher because of how strong he is, like Team Penske. His last one came in 2024 in a great battle with Shane Van Gisbergen and Watkins Glen. In 2023, was considered a championship contender with 3 wins during the late summer and finished in around 8 in standings that year. Chris Buescher has been close to winning a few more races over the last couple of years, and I think Buescher is going to win a lot more races in his Cup career as RFK Racing continues to grow as an organization. You never know, he might be able to win a championship Cup. He has a championship in the O'Reilly Series, but I think Buescher is on the track to have a great career in the sport, has put together some awesome and great numbers with RFK. Closing 100 career top 10s, could do that this year. I would expect that with the pace and speed they've shown over there in that number 17. He's had a solid career, and I think he's going to be moving up on this list as time goes on, as he's probably going to get to 10 to 15 wins. Many people comparing him like Terry Labonte, and I actually kind of see the comparisons because of how steady and smooth he is as a driver on the track. In the number 80 position, we have Jim Reed. Jim Reed picked up 7 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 38 top 5s, had 47 top 10s, and led 1,554 laps in Cup Series competition. Jim Reed's success came in the early portion of the sport. He only competed in like 4 or 5 seasons in Cup competition, but all success came in the early portion of NASCAR history, and he nearly won a couple championships in the early days of the sport. While Jim Reed didn't go on to win championships like Lee Petty or others like Falwell Roberts almost did, or others like, Herb Thomas, among others, he still had a very solid and successful career. Someone that's remembered for that, won some race in the convertible series, won a convertible championship, I believe, as well. Had a pretty strong and solid career in the early days of the sport and put together some really solid and great numbers. In the number 79 position, we have Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain is another driver who's still active to this day, with 6 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, with 39 top 5s, 74 top 10s, has led 1,867 laps, and won the Coca-Cola 600 in 2025. Ross Chastain has come very close to winning the championship multiple different times, including in 2022, where he was just about 300 feet from picking up the championship during that year, and had 2 wins during the 2022 season. Ross Chastain in recent years has come out of nowhere, but he's been a driver that has had a great story and one of the big feel-good stories from basically nothing, being a watermelon farmer, to being something. If Trackhouse can get it together, I think Ross can win a lot more races because he's someone that's usually good for winning a race or two. I think Ross is someone who's going to continue to have a lot of success in the sport for many years. If he goes to a great team, he can win a lot more. He has the potential to be a champion in the sport. Ross has been great for years and has had a solid career up to this point, and I think there's more top 10s, more top 5s and wins coming. It'll be looking for a Daytona 500 win sooner rather than later, as I think he has potential to win a Daytona 500 here relatively soon. In the number 78 position, we have Marshall Teague. Marshall Teague picked up 7 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 9 top 5s, 11 top 10s, and led 1,025 laps. Marshall Teague was a mechanic outside of his racing career, but Marshall Teague also was the king of the beach. Most of his NASCAR Cup success came on Daytona Beach before the Daytona National Speedway was officially made. He had a lot of success, like I said, on and off the racetrack, but really good in the 50s when the track was still around. He had, of course, drove, I think, the fabulous Hudson Hornet at one point as well. One of the most iconic cars of the early days of the sport, and a car that still revered heavily to this day. Marshall Teague, a very great driver, 7 Cup Series wins, pretty solid Cup Series career, getting a lot of wins and having a ton of success. Congrats on a great career to him. He picked up 7 wins and had a lot of success as an owner, and I think as a crew chief on top of that as well. In the number 77 position, we have Darrell Dieringer. Darrell Dieringer picked up 7 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 45 top 5s, 79 top 10s, led 2,517 laps, and won the 1966 Southern 500. Darrell Dieringer in the mid to late 1960s came very close to winning multiple NASCAR Cup Series championships. I think in 1966, he ended up finishing second in the standings to David Pearson. And in 1965, I believe, also finished second. And had it not been for the fact that he would have had an engine failure in 1965 Southern 500, he would have been the champion of that Southern 500 during that year. And probably could have won the championship because points are paid differently than they are now. Darrell Dieringer was really strong in the 1960s. His career came to an end very early, and probably a little too suddenly for it, but a lot of drivers, of course, back in the day retired a lot earlier if they were able to have a ton of success. 7 wins, a pretty solid career in motorsports, did some great things. Congrats him on a great career, as he says 77th on the list. In the number 76 position, we have an active driver, Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe currently has 6 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, has 37 top 5s, 60 top 10s, has led 1,587 laps, and has won 2 Southern 500s in a row in 2024 and 2025. The last year put him on this list. He had 3 wins in the 2025 season and made the championship for during that year, and has an outside chance to pick up his first Cup Series championship this year with the pace and speed that the number 19 car has been showing so far in the 2026 season. And it gets stronger and better every single week. Chase Briscoe is a really good driver. Big fan of Tony Stewart. You actually kind of see the similarities to Tony Stewart with the talent there. Maybe doesn't have like the charisma that Tony Stewart has from time to time. But Chase Briscoe is someone that looked up to drivers like Tony and is really well calculated, really good at air blocking. But Chase Briscoe having 2 Southern 500s, being a back-to-back Southern 500 champion, there's nothing to slouch about. You have to be really good to win back-to-back Southern 500s. He's been able to do that. Has had a strong career. He's going to win a championship and cup and probably win a lot more races over the next couple of years as well. In the number 75 position, we have AJ Foyt. AJ Foyt picked up 7 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 29 top 5s, had 36 top 10s, had 1,518 laps, and was the 1972 Daytona 500 winner. He is one of only 2 drivers who's won the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500, the other one being Martin Andretti, who won the Indy 500 and Daytona 500 in 69 and 67. AJ Foyt is not only one of the better drivers in the sport, has been considered for the NASCAR Hall of Fame, but AJ Foyt is one of the best drivers collectively across motorsports. He's won 4 Indy 500s, won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, won the 24 Hours of Daytona, won every major motorsports race you can win. I think he's won the Pikes Peak Hill Climb as well. In every motorsport he's been getting behind the wheel of, he's been able to have success. Won with the Wood Brothers, got that team a lot of success in their career. AJ Foyt is still alive to this day, been having success. His team, of course, competes in IndyCar. They had a team in NASCAR for a little bit. AJ Foyt raced basically from the late 1950s all the way to the early 1990s, which there's not many drivers that can say they can race that long. He actually almost ran the Brickyard 400 in 1994 after his career was pretty much over at that point. AJ had a great career in motorsports and had a very solid career in NASCAR Cup as well. In the number 74 position, I have Shane Van Gisbergen. This is the first time Shane Van Gisbergen has ever made the list. Shane Van Gisbergen has 8 career NASCAR Cup Series wins up to this point, has 12 top 5s, 18 top 10s, and has led 604 laps in Cup Series competition. Shane Van Gisbergen, you can argue right now, is the best road course racer in NASCAR Cup history. While yes, it's weird to have a guy who's only been in the Cup Series now for multiple years, his domination on road courses in the NASCAR Cup Series has honestly been incredible and really impressive. And he's only getting better on ovals. That's the other thing. I think Shane Van Gisbergen is on the verge of winning ovals with the speed that he's shown with Trackhouse. He nearly won a truck race Aspire at North Wilkesboro and finished in the top 5 in North Wilkesboro. Only the second time he's finished in the top 5 on an oval in Cup competition. If Trackhouse can get their stuff a little better, I think Shane could be on the verge of having a lot of wins. Unfortunately, no more road courses on the calendar, but he's very close to tying the record for most road course wins and victories. Shane is going to continue to be someone who's going to win more races. He's going to get the double-digit wins next year. Yes, Field's catching up, but also Trackhouse is struggling a bit with rumors about that team's future. Not sure what SVG's plans are going to be after next year, but I would expect SVG to stick around and win more road course races in the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 73 position, we have Jamie McMurray. Jamie McMurray picked up 7 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 63 top 5s, had 169 top 10s, and led 1,903 laps in Cup competition. Jamie McMurray won the 2010 Daytona 500 and won the 2010 Brickyard 400, and came very close that year, was sweeping all the crown jewels as he finished second in the Coke 600 that year and finished in second in the 2010 Southern 500. Jamie McMurray, in my opinion, is someone that probably doesn't get a lot of appreciation that he deserves. In only his second Cup Series start, he picked up his first win. Then it took him a while, but he won at Daytona in 2007. Then he got a win at Talladega in 2009. And 2010 had 3 wins, including 2 races that we mentioned earlier. Jamie McMurray, to me, is one of the most underappreciated drivers, but he's also someone that won in big moments. And that's something that Jamie McMurray can say. Great analyst in the sport to this day, still active, won some races, nearly won an O'Reilly championship in the early 2000s, was able to win in all 3 series, one of around 42 drivers who've been able to win in all 3 series. Jamie had a really strong career in motorsports with Chip Ganassi and Roush, and of course he's raced part-time this day, though he really isn't planning to race much, helping his son Carter develop his skills and craft. Murray's had a pretty good career and will continue being around the sport for many years to come. In the number 72 position, we have Kyle Petty. Kyle Petty picked up 8 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 52 top 5s, had 173 top 10s, led 3,909 laps, and won the 1987 Coca-Cola 600. Many people look at how long Kyle Petty raced in the sport and think, oh, he was a slouch in NASCAR. He didn't really do much. Kyle Petty, to me, is someone that does not get the respect that he deserves. Reminder, he had a really strong time in the 1990s. In the early 90s, Kyle Petty was basically a beast at Rockingham. He's one of the winningest drivers in history. Rockingham won there in 1990, won there in 91, got a win there in 1992, I believe, and was able to win a lot of races in the early 90s. It was actually one of the drivers that was in that championship conversation in 1992 when he drove for Felix Sabates' Sabco organization when that team was really strong. Unfortunate second half of the career was built with tragedy. He was not supposed to actually race after the 2000 season. He was supposed to retire to let Adam race, but unfortunately, Adam Petty was killed in a practice crash at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That's why Kyle stuck around, which is why I have a lot of respect for Kyle Petty to go out there and do that. Petty could have won more. He came close to winning races in his career, more than that. But I think Kyle Petty was a pretty solid driver in Cup Series competition, all things considered. In the number 71 position, we have Bob Welborn. Bob Welborn picked up 9 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 58 top 5s, had 1 or 2 top 10s, and led 1,643 laps in NASCAR Cup Series competition. Bob Welborn was a pioneer of the sport, one of the greatest 75 drivers, I believe, in NASCAR Cup Series history. Bob Welborn is someone that has some success, and I believe was also champion of the convertible series in NASCAR as well, and won some races in the early days at big tracks. He never won any big crown jewels like the Southern 500, but the Southern 500 was the only crown jewel was around at the time. He's, like I said, one of the pioneers of the sport, one of the OG pioneers who was really strong in the early days of the sport, having 100-plus top 10s, nothing to look over, nothing to hold your head up. Had a great career in NASCAR Cup competition with 9 wins. Not going to make the NASCAR Hall of Fame with those numbers, sadly, but a pretty good time in the early days. I think he's actually a Hall of Famer, one of the class, I'm pretty sure, in motorsports. Bob Welborn had a pretty solid career with 9 Cup Series wins. In the number 70 position, we have Paul Goldsmith. Paul Goldsmith picked up 9 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 44 top 5s, 59 top 10s, and led 2,352 laps in Cup Series competition. Paul Golston was not a great stock car, only a great stock car driver, but was a very strong and solid motocross driver who could be in the AMA Motocross Series and had a ton of success over in Europe as well. Won some championships in that. I think he's the only driver that's won championships in motocross who's gone to win championships in NASCAR, not championships, but win races in NASCAR up to this point. He's a very incredible race car driver, won a lot of races at Daytona. He was actually the final driver to win at Daytona on the beach in 1958 before they transitioned Daytona National Speedway. He was never able to get a major crown jewel victory, though he came close to winning Southern 500 and the Coke 600 multiple times in the early stages of those events. Paul Golston retired in the late 1960s. Then he was around in motorsports a little bit after that. I think he owned some dealerships as well. Did have some good success in the 60s and the 50s as well. In the number 69 position, we have Cotton Owens. Cotton Owens picked up 9 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 52 top 5s, 84 top 10s, and led 1,302 laps. Cotton Owens, all of his success came in the early days of the sport in the early 1950s. He also helped a driver win the championship in the early days of the sport as a car owner in the mid to late 1950s as well. He was known as a car owner and had a lot of success with a lot of different drivers. A lot of drivers got the chance and opportunity under Cotton Owens' ownership and leadership as well. That's a big reason why he's inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, because while he was a solid driver in his day, he was a really good person as an owner in the early days of the sport and got in the Hall of Fame because of that. Cotton Owens, a great driver in his own right, 9 wins, a pretty strong number in his career, and put together some great numbers, solid numbers, and picking up a strong career in NASCAR Cup as he had 84 top 10s and had 9 wins in his Cup career. In the number 68 position, we have Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman is another driver who is still active to this day with 8 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, 49 top 5s, 116 top 10s, and has led 1,533 laps in his NASCAR Cup Series career. Alex Bowman is a driver that the last couple years have been unfortunately hit with vertigo symptoms and injuries in the last few years, but Alex Bowman in the early days of Hendrick Motorsports has success. Won Chicago in 2019, pick up a win in 2020 at Auto Club Speedway. Also had a 4-win season in 2021, though he got eliminated in the round of 16 or round of 12. And then, of course, in 22 got a win in Las Vegas and got his final win at the Chicago Street Course. Alex Bowman, to me, is a driver that doesn't get a lot of respect that he deserves. Like, I know there's been some struggles for Bowman, but to me, Bowman is probably the best 4th driver in the history of Hendrick Motorsports. He was able to bring a lot of success in NASCAR Cup competition and was able to win some big races. There's not a lot of drivers that can say that being a 4th driver, they're able to be there. It's just because of the fact that William Byron, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson are 3 of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history, and you have 2 that are already probably going to get inducted to the Hall of Fame, and the one that's on the verge, if he gets more wins in a championship, of getting inducted in the Hall of Fame. Bowman's had a great career. Unfortunately, next year is going to be his final full-time season in the NASCAR Cup Series. Bowman with 8 career victories, put together some strong runs in the sport, 8 wins, great driver, and will continue being involved for one more season as he tries to pick up more wins and victories before the end of his career at the end of next year. In the number 67 position, we have Donnie Allison. Donnie Allison picked up 10 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 78 top 5s, had 115 top 10s, 4,639 laps led, and won the 1970 Coca-Cola 600. Now, Donnie Allison's another driver who is inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and a driver as part of the illustrious Alabama game. Now, Donnie Allison started a little bit later in NASCAR competition compared to his brother Bobby, who went on to be one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR ever. Donnie Allison had a lot of success in the late 1970s. He's also part of one of the most infamous moments in NASCAR history, the 1979 Daytona 500. We got into a fight with Cale Yarborough, battling for the win of the Daytona 500 that year. Donnie Allison, of course, is still, I believe, was around recently, basically helping out, I think, as a driver coach at one point. He was helping a lot of young drivers over the years, and was working with Hutch Strickland, since Hutch Strickland was related because of family stuff, I'm pretty sure. But Donnie Allison, of course, had a ton of success in his day in the 70s and also won races in the 1980s as well. Nearly won, like I said, Daytona 500. Never really had a shot to win a championship in his career, though being part of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, had a very strong and solid career with 10 wins, a pretty good career in NASCAR Cup competition. In the number 66 position, we have Sterling Marlin. Sterling Marlin picked up 10 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 83 top 5s, 216 top 10s, has led 4,298 laps, and is a two-time Daytona 500 winner in 1994 and 1995. He is one of only three drivers of Cup history that have won two Daytona 500s in a row. He, Denny Hamlin in 2019 and 20, and then, of course, William Byron in 2024 and 2025. Sterling Marlin is a driver that, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated drivers in NASCAR history. He's around for a very, very long time. He had a chance to win races, of course, with Junior Johnson in the early 1990s, was very strong with the 4-team, finished actually, I believe, third in the standings in 1995 and finished in the top 5 in points in 1994. Won also at Darlington in 1995, along with winning at Talladega during that year. But then he goes to Chip Ganassi Racing and reinvigorates his career and goes on to have a really strong year in 2001 and 2002. Unfortunately, in 2002, while battling for the championship, he had a really bad crash that cost him his career at that point, because from that point, his career, unfortunately, would go on a little bit of a downward spiral. Sterling Marlin, in my opinion, is someone that I respected as a driver, a great driver, won championships at the National Fairgrounds, great driver in the 90s and the early 2000s, and was able to put a lot of success on. I think had he not gotten injured at Kansas, I think he would have been a Cup champion. He would have probably won the championship in 2002 because that team was strong, especially at Charlotte. And I think he would have won more races in his career. Had a strong career, though, with 10 wins in the sport. In the number 65 position, we have Clint Bowyer. Clint Bowyer picked up 10 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 82 top 5s, 226 top 10s, and led 3,268 laps. Clint Bowyer, in my opinion, is someone that had a pretty solid career in NASCAR, was looked as a driver who could win championships in the sport, and nearly won a championship in 2012, finishing second in the standings to Brad Keselowski, and probably would have won the championship had it not been for the fact that he and Jeff Gordon got into it during that year. But Clint Bowyer, in his second year, won a race in New Hampshire and went on to finish third in the standings that season. Then in 2008, in the infamous battle between Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch during that year, he took the win at Richmond. Then 2010, went on to win races at New Hampshire and Talladega Superspeedway. Then 2011, won at Talladega during the fall event. And then in 2012, got multiple victories. It took him a while to get back to victory lane, but once he went to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2018, picked up 2 wins at Michigan and Martinsville Speedway. Clint Bowyer is someone that I think is a pretty strong driver. He's not the greatest in the booth and Fox, but I think as a driver, he was a very solid driver, was no slouch behind the wheel. Really good driver, a partier, one of the best characters in the sport. Had a pretty solid career, as he had a pretty strong career and nearly won a couple championships in his NASCAR Cup career. In the number 64 position, we have Dick Rathman. Dick Rathman picked up 13 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 69 top 5s, 79 top 10s, and had 2,182 laps led. And get this, he basically only had 128 to 129 Cup Series starts and did all of this in basically 5 to 6 years. Dick Rathman retired very early in the mid-1960s and 50s and all that. And I think had he now retired, I think he would have had a much better career. I think Dick Rathman's someone who could have won a lot more races, probably won a championship. Because Dick Rathman's success had, I think, like a 6-7 win season in like the 1956 or 57 season. Didn't go on to win the championship because I believe in 56 or 57, Lee Penny won one of those championships. I think Herb Thomas or Buck Baker won one of those championships during that time. And Buck Baker in the 50s and 60s was extremely unstoppable during the early days of the sport. So Dick Rathman had a pretty solid career, ended up picking up 13 wins, showed some great stuff with the organizations that he drove for, and put together some strong runs in Cup competition. In the number 63 position, we have Tim Richmond. Tim Richmond picked up 13 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 42 top 5s, 78 top 10s, led 2,534 laps, and won the 1986 Southern 500. Tim Richmond is someone that's probably one of the biggest what-if stories in NASCAR history. When he was dominating the sport in the mid-1980s, he unfortunately contracted AIDS during that time and passed away in 1989. And I think NASCAR has not shown respect to Tim Richmond, but I think he deserves. Had he stuck around, he would have been a Cup champion. He came very close to winning the championship in 1986 and won a lot of races during that year and season. And 87 was on track to contend for the championship before things unfortunately went haywire for him. He was someone that I think was a great personality, and of course had success in the IndyCar and karting days back in the day. But Tim Richmond is someone that, of course, nearly won the Daytona 500 multiple times, nearly had a shot to win the Indy 500 many years ago. I think Tim Richmond would have had a lot more success if he had not sadly passed away. 13 wins, still had a pretty solid career. Got a win at Pocono while he was sick and ill. And I think it's impressive what he did in motorsports as he came on to SEMA Hendrick Motorsports, one of the drivers that helped Hendrick get the success he had early. Tim Richmond was a strong driver in his own right. In the number 62 position, we have Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick is another driver who is still active to this day, currently at the moment. He has 13 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, 55 top 5s, 106 top 10s, has led 2,249 laps, and of course won this year's Daytona 500 for 2026. Tyler Reddick has really burst on the scene in 2026 alone with 5 wins in the first 10 or 11 races of the year. And throughout his career with underfunded teams, he was strong. In 22, picked up 3 wins at Road America, Texas, and at the Indianapolis Road Course. And in 2023, his first year with 2311, had a very strong year, picked up multiple victories, 2 or 3 wins during that season. And then in 2024, won the regular season championship and made the championship four during that year. Last year had a winless season, but this year he's been great. He has gone from a driver that probably would have been around 75th, 80th on the list initially to jumping up inside the top 65. And I think Reddick in the future is going to be a Cup Series champion. He has all the talent, all the qualities to do it. He's a very good driver. Many people like him. 2011 is getting stronger on top of that every year. And would not be surprised if it's either this year or next year that Tyler Reddick ends up being a NASCAR Cup Series champion. In the number 61 position, we have Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell is another active driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. With 13 career Cup Series wins, 68 top 5s, 117 top 10s, has led 3,139 laps, and won the Coca-Cola 600 and a rain-shortened Coke 600 in 2024. Christopher Bell is a driver that's come very close to winning races in the 2026 year, but Christopher Bell in the last couple years has been really strong. In year 2 in Cup, he picked up 1 win during that season at Daytona Road Course. Then 22 went on a tear and made the championship four. 2023 picked up multiple wins during that season. And then 24 and 25 was really strong during those years. Bell, I think, is going to be a guy who's going to win a championship in this sport. He's probably going to be one of the 50 to 45 greatest drivers. He's been great. He's someone that doesn't always show his character on TV, but there's nothing to show for that. Bell's been a great driver in the history of the sport. To be 61st, really strong career. And I think Bell, like I said, is going to win a lot more races. He's probably going to win this year before the end of the year with how strong Toyotas have been. He's been a great driver, 13 wins, great career, strong career, and 13 wins. One of the best drivers, at least of the modern era at this point. In the number 60 position, we have Dick Hutcherson. Dick Hutcherson picked up 14 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 64 top 5s, 73 top 10s, and did this in 4,045 starts, or 45 laps led, I should say. That's how many laps he led. Dick Hutcherson only ran 4 or 5 years in Cup competition, so to have the success he had in the mid to late 1960s is honestly impressive. After racing, he transitioned toward being a car owner and a crew chief, and won races as a crew chief as well in this sport. Dick Hutcherson, like I said, nearly won a couple championships. I think in 1965, he finished runner-up or third in the standings and nearly won some big races, including the Daytona 500 in the early days of NASCAR Cup. Dick Hutcherson, a great driver, would have won more races that he stuck around again. We talk about a lot of drivers retiring at a much earlier age. 14 wins, a pretty solid career, getting 14 Cup wins, nothing to slouch over. Very solid runs, and currently sits 60th all-time on the list, in my opinion. In the number 59 position, we have Leroy Yarbrough. Leroy Yarbrough picked up 14 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 65 top 5s, had 92 top 10s, led 3,407 laps, and is the only driver, I believe, in the history of NASCAR to win 3 crown jewels in the same season. He won the Daytona 500 in 1969, won the Coke 600 in 1969, and won the 1969 Southern 500. Leroy Yarbrough was a driver that, unfortunately, his career took a very dark turn. And it's a shame because had his career not taken a dark turn after some really bad wrecks, I think Leroy Yarbrough would have been a lot higher here. I think he would have won more than 14 races. He probably could have gotten, 20 to 25 wins in his career minimum. Could have been one of the 50 greatest of all time. I think he was one of the 50 greatest until he wasn't, after a lot of drivers got a lot better. But Leroy Yarbrough was someone who probably should have had more success than he did. And like I said, if it wasn't for injuries and medical stuff that happened, where eventually I think he got sent to a mental institute in the early 1980s, I think he generally would have been successful. Unfortunately, passed away from, I think, a fall, I'm pretty sure, in the 1980s. It's a shame how everything kind of went down the way it did at the end. I think Leroy was a very strong and good driver. It's a shame how things went down because Leroy was really strong in the mid to late 1960s. In the number 58 position, we have Ernie Irvan. Ernie Irvan picked up 15 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 68 top 5s and 124 top 10s, led 5,471 laps, and was a 1991 Daytona 500 winner. He was the first driver who was able to have a lot of success in the 4-car for the Morgan McClure organization. He nearly won a championship with that team in early mid-1990s. Then he went to Robert Yates Racing in 1994, around that time in 93. In his first year with the team, he was a championship contender. Here was a very realistic chance had he not been injured in a bad crash in Michigan in 1994, which came back from 3 years ago, 3 years later, I should say, in 1997, and picked up a win in Michigan, a very emotional victory. Had it not been for that crash, Ernie Irvan more than likely is looking at a championship because he was better than Earnhardt during that season with the speed and pace he showed. And I think that Ernie Irvan was a very underrated driver historically. I think had he not gotten injured the way he did, and then had the injury in 99, I think Ernie Irvan would have won a lot more races. I think he could have won 25 to 30 races. I know hypotheticals are a thing, but Ernie honestly was a very strong driver in his day. The 90s, he was so dominant, one of the best drivers of the early days of the 1990s. Again, I think he would have had a lot more success had things gone a lot better. Ernie was a great driver in the early 90s and was able to win races from basically the 1990 up until 1997, where he got his last win during that season at Michigan International Speedway before losing his ride with the 28 car going into 1998. In the number 57 position, we have William Byron. William Byron is another driver who is active currently at the moment. He has 16 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, has 69 top 5s, 129 top 10s, has led 4,444 laps in his career, and has won the Daytona 500 twice in 2024 and 2025. While 2026 has not gone as strong for him or any driver from the Hendrick Motorsports organization, William Byron has burst on the scene in recent years. He has won a race every single year since 2020. 2020 got a win at Daytona. 2021 picked up a win at Homestead. 2022 had a 2-win season in 22. 23 had a 6-win season. 24 had a couple victories during that year, and last year had multiple victories in the NASCAR Cup Series. William Byron, I think, is going to have a shot to win races this year, and he's going to win a lot more races. And like his teammates Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, in the next few years, he is going to be a Cup champion because William Byron is that good of a race car driver. I have the faith and confidence of Byron. He came close to winning it last year had not been for a flat tire. He would have had the pace and speed to win that race. Byron really strong during that time. Great driver in the sport, and he's going to win a lot more races and probably win a lot more crown jewels in his NASCAR Cup Series career. In the number 56 position, we have Marvin Panch. Marvin Panch picked up 17 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 96 top 5s, had 126 top 10s, led 3,099 laps in the NASCAR Cup Series. He won the 1961 Daytona 500 and the 1966 Coca-Cola 600. Marvin Panch was a beast in the 1950s and the 1960s, mostly in the early to mid-1960s. All of his success came mostly with the Wood Brothers and other organizations associated with the Wood Brothers as well. And Marvin Panch put together some strong numbers in the early days. He's one of the 75 greatest drivers in NASCAR Cup history, according to NASCAR's data, and never won a championship, but he did come close to winning multiple championships in the early days of the sport. Only ran a few years full-time, I'm pretty sure, but Marvin Panch was a great driver in the 60s, nearly won some other big races, came close to winning Southern 500. His son tried to race, didn't really work out in the 60s. He didn't have a ton of success, but Marvin was a good driver with a lot of different teams and organizations, put together some great performances, and Marvin Panch nearly won championships in his NASCAR Cup Series career with the Wood Brothers. In the number 55 position, we have Curtis Turner, a.k.a. Pops. Curtis Turner picked up 17 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 54 top 5s, 73 top 10s, led 4,918 laps, and won the 1956 Southern 500. Curtis Turner, to many people, is considered to be the first true superstar in NASCAR history. He was very, very popular. A lot of tracks would want Curtis Turner to be there regardless. Curtis Turner was a driver who never wanted to compete for a Cup Series championship. He would go out to the biggest races out there and would draw in massive and really huge crowds. But Curtis Turner was not just a great person on the track, he was a great person off the track. and Curtis Turner had a ton of success and brought a lot of people in. He had a lot of charisma around him, and a lot of tracks would say, including NASCAR, when he got banned from the sport after starting a union in the 60s, NASCAR actually unbanned him in the first race. He comes back at Rockingham in the inaugural race at that track in 1965. Curtis Turner was a driver who picked up the winning victory in that event. Curtis Turner, had he been able to win a championship, he'd been a lot higher because Curtis Turner was really, really good in the late 50s and the early 60s as well. Again, he got banned for whatever reason, but Curtis had a really strong and solid career. One of the most interesting careers, I think, in recent memory that I can remember. Curtis Turner, again, did some great things and had 17 career NASCAR Cup Series wins and victories. In the number 54 position, we have Kasey Kahne. Kasey Kahne has picked up 18 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 93 top 5s, had 176 top 10s, led 4,678 laps, is a 3-time Coca-Cola 600 winner in 2006, 2008, and 2012, and won the 2017 Brickyard 400, his final win in the NASCAR Cup Series. Kasey Kahne was really strong in the mid-2000s. He didn't win a race in 2004, but probably should have won a lot of races during his rookie season. 2005 won at Richmond, but he had a sophomore slump. 2006 had a 6-7 win season. Then 07 went winless, and then 2008 got 2 wins. 2009 got 2 wins. Then in 2011 got a win with the Red Bull organization, a final win for Red Bull Racing as a team. And then, of course, he picked up 1 or 2 wins in 2012 and finished in the top 5 in points. Kasey never really competed for championships in Cup, but he was very competitive and someone that was going to be a force to be reckoned with in the sport. And to this day, Kasey Kahne is still racing somewhat on a part-time basis, as he ran some races in World of Outlaws, actually got a win in World of Outlaws very recently, and there's been talk he could come back and do some stuff in trucks. He also, his truck numbers, he's only had 1 finish worse than second in truck competition. They've actually only 1 finish worse than first, and that second place finish at Pocono in 2010. His winning percentage in trucks is honestly incredible. Kasey's also a really strong qualifier in his day, and Kasey was very strong as he had some great success. Also won the All-Star race in 2008, despite the fact he didn't win a race or didn't even win the All-Star Channel Open, went on to win the fan vote, and went on to win the race to get in there. In the number 53 position, we have Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman has picked up 18 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 117 top 5s, had 268 top 10s, but 4,863 laps, won the 2008 Daytona 500, the final win he had with Dodge, and then he won the 2013 Brickyard 400, the final win he ended up having with Stewart-Haas Racing. Ryan Newman's career to me is one of the most interesting careers in recent NASCAR history. Ryan Newman was a driver who had a strong early start. In fact, many people thought that Ryan Newman, with how good he was going to dominate more than Jimmy Johnson had, because 2003, Ryan Newman had an 8-win season. The problem is Ryan Newman had 16 Fs and didn't go on to win the championship. Had we had the format we had now, Ryan Newman, even with DNS, would have probably won the championship during that season. Ryan Newman was a great driver. Then things kind of faded a little bit and didn't have the same success he had in the early days. But Newman still kept around, and he won his final race at Phoenix in 2017. And to this day, Ryan Newman is still racing. He's actually leaving the top 5 in points in the Smart Modified Tour. And Ryan Newman's a driver who was the Rocky Man. Ryan Newman won over 50, I think he won like 51 or 52 poles in Cup or something like that, which honestly, that number on its own is absolutely insane. Ryan Newman was a rocket man. They always brought rockets out there when it came to qualifying. Ryan Newman was a great driver. Didn't really have a shot to win a championship. Actually came close to winning in 2014. Should correct myself on that. But Ryan Newman didn't win a race during that year. So Ryan Newman was very solid and a really good driver, even up until around the 2014 season. In the number 52 position, I have Neil Bonnet. Neil Bonnet picked up 18 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 83 top 5s, had 156 top 10s, led 6,378 laps, won the 1981 Southern 500, and was a 2-time Coca-Cola 600 winner. Neil Bonnet is a career of what-ifs as well, like others we mentioned. Neil Bonnet, to me, is someone that probably would have had a lot more success if not for injuries, and his unfortunate passing in a practice crash in the 1994 Daytona 500. Neil Bonnet was not only a great race car driver, but was a great broadcaster on top of it as well, and was very well respected and liked by many in the garage. Helped a lot with the safety on top of that as well in the sport. It had some very ferocious crashes. But Neil Bonnet also came very close to winning the Daytona 500 in his career. And Neil Bonnet had an outside shot at winning championships. One with Junior Johnson, one with the Raymock organization in the 1980s. Neil Bonnet was able to do some pretty awesome and great things. Also, I think one with the Woodburrs, I'm pretty sure. Neil Bonnet just had a lot of good things going in his racing career and have 18 wins, pretty great career in the sport. It's a shame things went wrong when they did, because I think had it not been for injuries, he would have won a lot more. But Neil was a great driver in the sport. And again, they have 18 wins, nothing to slouch over. He had a pretty solid career in the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 51 position, we have Geoff Bodine. Geoff Bodine picked up 18 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 100 top 5s, had 190 top 10s, led 8,683 laps in Cup competition, and won the 1986 Daytona 500. Geoff Bodine was also a great bobsledder, as he helped design a lot of bobsleds, helped the U.S. men's bobsled team, and did some great things on that front. But Geoff Bodine, in my opinion, deserves a lot of credit. Because if it wasn't for Geoff Bodine, Hendrick Motorsports right now as an organization would not exist, because had he not won that race in 1984 at the 1984 Sovereign Bank 500 at Martinsville, we would not probably have a Hendrick Motorsports team or organization at this point. And Geoff Bodine, of course, came close to winning some big races in his career and had a lot of success throughout time. I mean, when he went to the owner-driver side of things in 1994, around there, he picked up multiple victories, was inconsistent, but Geoff Bodine was around for a long time and put together some great numbers. Geoff Bodine was, again, the first driver, the Hendrick, that really helped that team grow. He was one of the first choices they had. He also was a great modified driver. Started late as well, because Geoff Bodine, I think he's in his mid to late 70s. He only got in the Cup in his mid to late 30s, going even go in his early 40s. So Geoff Bodine didn't come in until late there. But to have success he had in such a short period of time with teams like Junior Johnson, other organizations, nearly won a championship with Junior Johnson and Bud Moore over the years, Geoff was a solid enough guy and had a really strong and really solid career in his NASCAR Cup career at that point. In the number 50 position, we have Harry Gant. Harry Gant picked up 18 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 123 top 5s, had 208 top 10s, led 8,446 laps, and won 2 Southern 500s, once in 1984 and also in 1991. Harry Gant was Mr. September and was one of the, I believe is actually to this day, the oldest winner to get her first win in Cup competition around the age of 42 years old. Harry Gant was a driver that was a late bloomer, but a successful late bloomer at that. He dominated the sport, especially in the early 1990s. In 1991, he had 4 to 5 wins during that stretch and was known as Mr. September, dominating that portion of the schedule and that portion of the season. And on top of that as well, Harry Gant was a great driver. I mean, if you look at him even now to this day, he still looks like he's around when he was 30 to 40 years ago. He hasn't really aged that much, even though his voice has aged. He really hasn't aged that much as a driver. Harry Gant was a very strong driver in his day, and that 4-race stretch he won was one of the most impressive things we could see, and he is to this day the oldest winner in Cup competition at the age of 52 when he won in Michigan in 1992. And I don't think there's going to be a chance someone is going to break that record at this point. Harry Gant, great driver, Mr. September, very well expected in the garage. Me and him also share a birthday with January 10th, so I think that's a really cool thing for him. But all honesty and seriousness, Harry Gant was a very strong driver in the 80s and 90s. Got his first win in 81, had a lot of success with Howell Needham, nearly won a championship multiple times. Actually was part of that scrum for the championship in 1992, and an outside shot to win the championship in 1991 as well. In the number 49 position, we have Fonnie Flock. Fonnie Flock picked up 19 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 72 top 5s, 83 top 10s, and had 4,681 laps led. Fonnie Flock was second of the third brothers from the Flock family on this list, one of the patriarchs of the Flock family. Fonnie Flock didn't have the success that his brother Tim had, but he also had more success than his brother Bob Flock had. Fonnie Flock was really strong in the early 1950s and one of the drivers that won a lot of races in the early days of the sport and brought the Flock family a ton of success and came close to winning a few championships during that time. Well, he never won a championship. We remember the Flock family for how great of a family they were and as an organization as well. Fonnie put together some really strong and promising runs in his day as a driver in the sport with 19 career Cup Series wins, strong in the early days with early fashion, putting together some great stuff, helping the Flock family have a ton of success. Congrats on a great career for Flock as he picked up 19 wins and had a lot of success. Nearly won a few big races on top of that. Didn't race past like the mid-1950s, focused on a lot of other things outside, and just was a strong driver in his day and is right. In the number 48 position, we have Buddy Baker. Buddy Baker picked up 19 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 202 top 5s, had 311 top 10s, led 9,744 laps, won the 1980 Daytona 500, the fastest Daytona 500 in NASCAR history, won the 1970 Southern 500, and had 3 Coca-Cola 600 wins. While Buddy Baker never won a championship, Buddy Baker was a great driver in the 70s and early 80s as well. He got his last win around 1983 to 1984, and Buddy Baker, after his career, went to the broadcasting side of things and also was a spotter and really was a driver coach for Ryan Newman as well, helping him develop with the Penske organization. I think Buddy Baker is a driver that doesn't get as much respect for how he was as a driver. The gentle giant, as a lot of people call him. Because he was someone that, while gentle, would not take it from a lot of people. And it's someone that you had to respect in the garage if you're going to want to get that respect from Buddy Baker. He's someone that just was great. He nearly won championships in his career, was part of the Harry Raniere organization, helped that team grow before, of course, the 28 got sold off to the Robert Yates team, helped that organization get up under their way, and just had a lot of success with that group. And again, great broadcaster on top of that. 19 wins, a pretty strong number. It almost won some other big races, but Buddy Baker was a great driver in the late 70s and the early 80s as well, and also won like in the mid 60s until the 80s. So he had a pretty long career on top of that as well until the late 1980s. In the number 47 position, we have Greg Biffle. Greg Biffle picked up 19 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 92 top 5s, had 175 top 10s, led 5,845 laps in the NASCAR Cup Series, and had 2 Southern 500 wins. Greg Biffle was a late bloomer. He was not a full-time Cup Series rookie till around the age of 33 years old, one of the oldest Rookie of the Year winners. But he won right off the get-go. In 2003, won at Daytona, then 2004 went on to win 2 races at Homestead and Michigan, and then 2005 in his 3rd season, nearly became the first driver in NASCAR history to win in all 3 series. Then in 06, picked up a Southern 500 win. Then he also got another win, I think, at Homestead during that year. Also in 05, won Homestead and also won a Southern 500. Then, of course, in 07, won a controversial race at Kansas. Then 2008 was one of the bloomers for the championship and went on to basically contend for that title that year. Then 2010 won 2 races at Pocono and Kansas. And then, of course, 2011, 2012 has some decent successes. Last one coming in 2013. If it wasn't for loyalty, Greg Biffle had a lot more success. We all miss Biffle, though. Biffle not only was a great driver, but also a great man on and off the racetrack and did a lot of good things behind the scenes. Unfortunately, we know about the plane crash and that happened last year, so one of the most devastating days I think we've seen as motorsports fans. Greg Biffle came very close to getting inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which I should mention. Some other drivers I forgot to mention, like Buddy Baker, also got inducted. But Greg Biffle should be inducted in the next couple years. He probably will get inducted in the future. Greg Biffle is a great driver, very solid driver, and I hope he does get inducted soon because I think Greg Biffle would have been the first driver to win all 3 championships had things gone right in his career. In the number 46 position, we have Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney is an active driver with 19 career NASCAR Cup Series wins up to this point, was a 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion, has 100 top 5s currently at the moment with 183 top 10s, has led 5,613 laps, and also won the 2023 Coca-Cola 600. Ryan Blaney in recent years has become the best and strongest Penske racing driver in the organization. And every year, Ryan Blaney's good for picking up multiple wins. Of course, he picked up his first win at Pocono 2017. Then 2018 with Penske, won at the Roval. Then 2019 got multiple wins during that time at Talladega and was really strong during that time there. 2020 also won at Talladega. Then 21 had his first multi-win season at Daytona and Atlanta, Michigan. Then 22 went winless. 23 got 3 wins during that year, picking up wins in the Coast 600 and winning earlier in the season as well, and winning at Martinsville and then winning at Phoenix. 24, picking up a win at Phoenix, I'm pretty sure, also winning earlier in the year at like Talladega, I'm pretty sure. Then 2025, he was able to have a strong season last year, picking up multiple wins, and so far this year has 2 victories. Ryan Blaney, to me, is someone that's going to win a lot more, and he's a Cup champion. He's a future Hall of Famer. Ryan Blaney, very well liked, and one of the best drivers, really good at saving his stuff. And I think by the time his career is over, Ryan Blaney's probably not only going to be in the top 30, he may be a top 25 driver at this rate. Because right now, 25th has like 35 wins. I think Ryan Blaney can get to that. He's got the potential. He's still very young. I think he's going to win a lot more races and have a ton of more success in Cup going forward and in the future. In the number 45 position, we have Speedy Thompson. Speedy Thompson picked up 20 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 77 top fives, 105 top tens, led 3,728 laps, and won the 1957 Southern 500. Speedy Thompson is someone that I feel like is forgotten in the history of the sport. I don't even think he's part of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers ever, I'm pretty sure, but Speedy Thompson is someone who's forgotten. He was really strong in the early days of the sport, in the early 1950s, and he had success outside of the race car on top of that as well. But Speedy Thompson, I think, is a driver that probably should be remembered by a lot of younger fans. Because when people see that name, they're thinking, a guy with 20 wins, is he a real driver? As mentioned on the NASCAR Weekly podcast. Well, Speedy Thompson, in fact, was a real driver. He had some pretty good success in his time as a race car driver. Like I said, with 20 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, nothing to scoff over, nothing to slouch about. Very strong driver in his day. One of, I believe, only 45 drivers in the history of NASCAR that's won at least 20 races. Won't be the last driver to get the 20 wins, but Speedy Thompson had some good success. And winning Southern 500 back then, very difficult, as a lot of drivers failed to finish unlike nowadays. And even to this day, it's still difficult to win. But I think Speedy Thompson was a very solid and really good driver. In the number 44 position, we have Jack Smith. Jack Smith picked up 21 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 95 top fives, had 142 top tens, and led 3,551 laps in Cup Series competition. Jack Smith had a lot of success in the early days of the sport. I believe was actually the original winner of the first Bristol race in 1961. Then, of course, Jack Smith won some other big races and came close to winning the Daytona 500 multiple different times. Jack Smith was known for, I believe, working on his cars as well, and I think was also at one point a car owner, I'm pretty sure, in his time. And Jack Smith, in general, in a nutshell, was a driver who did put together some really strong performances and really great stuff. Outside of that, there's not much that's known about Jack Smith. I think he's actually part of some Hall of Fames in South Carolina, I'm pretty sure, and I think he's in the North Carolina, South Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame, just because of all he did in the early days. Also nearly won some convertible series championships. But on top of that, Jack Smith was just solid, incredible, and a pretty good career on top of that in his NASCAR career at this point. In the number 43 position, we have Davey Allison. Davey Allison picked up 19 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, has 66 top fives, had 92 top tens, led 4,978 laps, won the 1992 Southern Daytona 500 in a photo finish, and won the 1991 Coca-Cola 600 as well. Also won one hot night with the All-Star race in 1992. Davey Allison was a very, very good driver, and I think one of the biggest what-if stories in NASCAR Cup history. Because Davey Allison, we know, unfortunately, had the helicopter crash in 1993 in the summer of that year. Davey Allison got a win during that season. While he probably wasn't going to win the championship in 93, judging by how things are going for the Robert Yates Racing Team in the late 1990s with Dale Jarrett winning a championship during that time, I truly do believe that Davey Allison could have won a championship and came close to winning it in 1992. He probably would have also been one of the drivers that would have stopped Jeff Gordon's dominance in the early days of Jeff Gordon's success. Davey Allison is a big what-if. I think he honestly could have won 30 to 40 races. He probably could have been racing up until like the early 2000s with how talented he was, because he was very young when he unfortunately passed away, I think in his early 30s. He would have been racing until his early 40s had things gone right for Davey. If he was only around 33 at that point. Davey, again, was a very strong driver, great driver in his own right, helped the Robert Yates Racing Team have success. Won as a rookie in 1987, got 2 wins as a part-time driver. And Davey, like I said, put together some great performances in his lifetime. And again, he should have won more races like Southern 500, but 19 wins, had a great career. And I think a Hall of Famer on top of that, so great stuff for him there. Just a great driver in general. In the number 42 position, we have Jeff Burton, also known as the Mayor. Jeff Burton is getting inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, had 21 career Cup Series wins, had 134 top fives, 254 top tens, led 6,532 laps, was a 2-time Coke 600 winner in 1999, in 2001, and won the 1999 Southern 500. Jeff Burton is a driver that most of his success came in the mid to late 1990s, up until 2008, before kind of having a little bit of fall off after the 2008 season, though he still nearly won in 2010 and 2011 as well. Jeff Burton, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated drivers in NASCAR history. While, yes, he didn't have the numbers of guys like Jimmy Johnson, Dale Sr., Mark Martin, the field that he competed in was super competitive. Not only is he a great driver, he is very well respected in and out of the garage as well. And Jeff Burton, to me, is someone that I think deserves to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And I think he was just a very solid driver. I mean, he won a lot of races. He's still around to this day as a broadcaster and to win two Coke 600s, a Southern 500, nearly winning two, really good at Darlington like his brother was at this track. Jeff Burton is revered as someone that was very good at tracks like this throughout his career, very good at tough tracks on top of that. Won at Charlotte with like 3 or 4 times because he ended up winning the fall race in 2008. Got to win at Bristol in 2008 during that year. Won at Texas in 07. Just really good because he had that stretch of races where he struggled with Roush at the end of his time there. But again, he just had a ton of success in motorsports in general. And Jeff Burton is liked by a lot of people and well respected in the garage as well. In the number 41 position, we have Benny Parsons. Benny Parsons picked up 21 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 1973 NASCAR Cup champion, had 199 top 5s, had 283 top 10s, led 6,861 laps, was the 1975 Daytona 500 champion, and the 1980 Coca-Cola 600 champion as well. Benny Parsons, the lovable driver. He was a fantastic driver in his day. His first win came, I believe, in the late 1960s. In like his 3rd or 4th year, he basically won the championship. And at that championship, he only had like 1 or 2 lead lap finishes during that season. But he only won 1 or 2 races. That was enough to win the championship during that year. Benny Parsons, while a great commentator, was a great race car driver. He had a lot of success. I mean, his last one came in 1985 in his mid-40s. Very few drivers do that nowadays. Back in then it was kind of common, but nowadays it isn't as like that. But Benny Parsons also just a great commentator on top of that. And I bring the commentary up because he's well-liked off the track, but on the track, he was very well respected by many in the garage. He also was the individual that discovered Greg Biffle and helped get Greg Biffle into the sport in a nutshell. So Benny Parsons was super successful, had a lot of success in the 70s, nearly won multiple championships, went part-time in the mid-80s, so won race a part-time driver, nearly won, beat Belay in his first win in 1983, I'm pretty sure, at Riverside. Had a ton of success, won some road course races in his career, was around for a long time, and just a great driver in the history of this sport. In the number 40 position, we have Bobby Labonte. Bobby Labonte won 21 career NASCAR Cup Series races, was a 2000 NASCAR Cup Series champion, 115 top 5s, had 203 top 10s, led 4,060 laps, won the 1995 Coca-Cola 600, and won the Brickyard 400 2000 and the Southern 500 in 2000 as well. Bobby Labonte's career is one that I think is a little bit of a what-if story. What if Bobby Labonte had taken the opportunity to go to Richard Childress Racing around 2010? There was a lot of rumors he was going to be going over to RCR around that time. Because his career at Joe Gibbs Racing, I don't think he got a true fair shake at the end. Because JGR during that time, while Tony Stewart was tearing it up, Bobby Labonte was good. But people forget, early Porsche 2004, Bobby Labonte was really, really good. And then things fell apart. Michael Fatback McSwain was fired from the team. And things just went downhill. His last opportunity to really win was 2005 at a Coke 600 in the photo finish, Jimmy Johnson. I think Bobby Labonte is a driver that, in my opinion, was a great driver in his day. Successful with Joe Gibbs right off the bat, got 3 wins during the 95 season, a sweep of Michigan in a Coke 600 win. Then, of course, in 96, he was one of the best drivers in history of Atlanta. Had like 6-7 of his wins like Atlanta Motor Speedway, including in 2003. Joe Gibbs Racing Fair, though, was super good there. But Bobby Labonte, to me, a great driver, pretty solid analyst as well. Off the track, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, and one of the better family of the Labontes. Not as good as his brother on that front, but he was a really strong driver. Had he retired a little bit earlier in his career, like his brother, I think he would have been a lot higher, would have had a lot more revered career. He was still a great driver, though, in his day in the 90s and the early 2000s on top of that as well. In number 39 position, we have Terry Labonte. Terry Labonte picked up 22 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. He is the first multi-time champion, I believe, on this list with 2 Cup Series championships in 1984 and 1996. Had 182 top 5s, had 361 top 10s, has 7,044 laps, and won 2 Southern 500s. Those coming in the 1980 Southern 500. His first win, and get this, his last win was a 2003 Southern 500. Terry Labonte is another driver that I feel like his career lasted a little bit too long for his own good. Because Terry Labonte, had he retired a little bit earlier than he did, I think he would have been looking at his career a lot better than we were looking at. But still, Terry Labonte is a NASCAR Hall of Famer, got inducted, I believe, in 2015, I'm pretty sure. And Labonte was racing in NASCAR from basically like 1976 or 77 up until like 2011 or 2012. So he raced for a very, very long time. Had Terry just retired like he was going to, he probably would have been looked at a lot higher. But Terry was a great driver, one of the most consistent, had the record for a long time for the most starts in Cup history in a row. Might get broken by Joey Logano in the future with how long Logano's been racing, but Terry Labonte, just a great driver in the 80s and the 90s. Won championship with Billy Hagan in 1984. Got a championship with Hendrick in 96. And I think Terry Labonte, in a nutshell, was just consistent. Didn't have flashy seasons where he won a lot of races like his teammates did over the years. But Terry Labonte was just a great driver in his own right. Very solid, very successful, and was very much able to win a lot of big races in his career. In number 38 position, we have Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd picked up 23 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 194 top 5s, had 374 top 10s, led 7,872 laps, and in 1997, he won the Brickyard 400. Ricky Rudd was one of the drivers who had one of the longest 10-year careers in NASCAR history. But not only that, he won the longest careers of winning consistently. Ricky Rudd had like a streak of like 18 years or something like that where he won a race. Whatever year, I believe, from 1982 all the way to the year 1998. So at 17 years in a row where he picked up a win. During that time, he won some big races. Won at Bristol, had a couple multi-win seasons during that point. Then he went winless for 2 years, and then in 2001, picked up 2 wins. In 2002, went on to win a race at Sonoma before never winning another NASCAR Cup race again. Ricky Rudd getting in the Hall of Fame was well justified. The Rooster just very consistent. He was super, super good, very, very talented. And Ricky was in an era of drivers where everything was superb and just spectacular. I think Ricky's someone that is just amazing at what he's been able to do in his racing career, and he's going to continue to be remembered for how great of a driver he was. He's been back in the sport in recent years, got inducted last year, well deserved to be inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Congrats him on that. And I think Ricky Rudd just winning the Brickyard. One of the races you need to watch is the 1998 race in Martinsville, which was the last time he actually won a race in the 10. That race to me is a race that sums up how amazing of a driver Ricky Rudd was, because what he did that year was honestly special. With basically having the cool box not working, everything else not working, that's where I think a lot of people have a ton of respect for Ricky Rudd, is what he did in that situation as a driver. In the number 37 position, we have Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott's another driver who's still active in the Cup Series to this day, with 23 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. He won the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series Championship, had 120 top 5s, had 198 top 10s, and has led 6,260 laps in Cup Series competition. Chase Elliott has been one of the best drivers over the last 10 to 11 years, not just on the winning side, but on the consistency side as well. It is very likely that over the next few years that Chase Elliott is going to jump up on the all-time wins list, probably around 30, 40 wins, very close to what his father billed that. Because remember, Chase Elliott will be only turning 31 at the end of this year. Chase Elliott, in my opinion, is someone who could also win another Cup Series championship. In this format that we have, if Hendrick can find a pace and speed, I think that Chase Elliott can go out there and be more successful than he's been. And he's been one of the most successful drivers in Hendrick Motorsports history. I think he's either got the most, or like the third or fourth most wins in the history of Hendrick Motorsports. And Chase has just been very good with multiple wins in the last 2 years. I expect Chase to win a lot more races. I do think a championship is coming down. He's been extremely popular, most popular driver many times in his career. And I think Chase Elliott's on the verge of jumping in the top 30. And I think he'll be winning a lot more races in the NASCAR Cup Series career in the future. Well, also myself got the chance to see Chase Elliott win at Kansas in 2025. In number 36 position, we have Jim Paschal. Jim Paschal won 25 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 149 top 5s, had 230 top 10s, led 4,787 laps, and has 2 Coco 600 wins. When we talk about the NASCAR Hall of Fame, there's always something to talk about the Jim Paschal line. Jim Paschal, though, was no slouch behind the wheel. He was a very talented race car driver who won some big races, won the 1967 Coca-Cola 600, and is someone that I think is heavily forgotten in the history of the sport, which I personally don't think he should be forgotten in the history of the sport. Because Jim Paschal, like I mentioned multiple times, was just in general a very solid and a really respectful and a really good NASCAR driver in his own name, in his own right. And won with some big teams and organizations. Won with Petty Enterprises. Won with some other strong and really good years. And I think in general, in a nutshell, he was just very, very good in the sport. I mean, he only made like 400 or 500 starts in his career and was able to win a lot in his time. So I think Jim Paschal, winning 25 races, great career, really good in the early 60s and the mid 60s on top of that. And I think Jim Paschal is someone who's just very strong and very possibly one of the better drivers in the history of the sport, especially in the 60s. And I think he should be in the Hall of Fame personally because he won the Coke 600 twice. So he had a pretty good career in the sport, very strong, and put together some really strong and very strong seasons, had some really great years in the history of the sport. Probably could have won a few championships in his NASCAR Cup Series careers. I think he came close to winning a few times, had a lot of success, put together some strong and amazing and fantastic years, and I think he was a really strong driver in history, picking up as many wins as he did some great things, and went on to win very many races. Congrats to Jim Bichelle, and I think he personally, like I said, should be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame overall, in my opinion. In the number 35 position, we have Joe Weatherly. Joe Weatherly picked up 25 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, picked up 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships in the early 1960s, had 105 top 5s, 153 top 10s, and led 3,529 laps led. Now, Joe Weatherly, unfortunately, while he was in a dominant portion of his NASCAR career, suffered, unfortunately, a fatal crash in the early 1960s, which is a shame. I think Joe Weatherly had things going right in his career. I think Joe Weatherly would have probably went on to be one of the better drivers in the history of the sport. But he was a great driver, won some big races. I think nearly won some races at Rockingham, I'm pretty sure. And he also just was able to be really strong at a lot of tracks in the 50s and the 1960s. Also nearly won the Southern 500 many, many times as well. Didn't have a chance to win the Daytona 500, but he came close to winning some big races in the 60s. And I think Joe Weatherly is someone that I think is well-respected and well-rounded in the history of the early days of the sport. If you ask many drivers historically who was one of the better drivers they competed against, many are going to bring up Joe Weatherly. So I think he was a pretty good driver in that time. Put together some fantastic, strong numbers. I mean, having 25 wins, only like 35 drivers in the history of 36 have won that many races. So I think that's a number that's well respected by many in the history of the sport. In the number 34 position, we have Fred Lorenzen. Fred Lorenzen had 26 NASCAR Cup Series victories, had 75 top 5s, had 84 top 10s, led 8,152 laps, won the 1965 Daytona 500, and was a 2-time Coca-Cola 600 winner. Fun fact about Fred Lorenzen, he was the first driver in NASCAR history to win $100,000 and became the first driver to reach that number on the purse money when he had $122,000, which is the most anyone had, which at the time was foreign, but now that's pretty much how much a driver makes every time they win a race in the NASCAR Cup Series. Fred Lorenzen was very popular, was really strong in the Holman Moody days, and nearly won championships in the NASCAR Cup Series in the early days of the sport. He actually had a little bit of a comeback in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, nearly won some races during that time of the sport as well. Known as very popular from Elmhurst, Fred Lorenzen was around for a long time. I think he actually was active in the sport outside of racing, did himself on the mechanical side of things on top of that. But Fred Lorenzen was just a great driver. Like I said, a Daytona 500 champion, one of the early Daytona 500 winners, nearly won in the first couple years, mind you, in the early 1960s. But to win the 500 the way they did with the Holman Moody team, super impressive to do that, one of the better organizations. And then they have 2 Coca-Cola 600 wins. Pretty incredible to have 2 of those wins with Man and Machine being a thing back in the day. In the number 33rd position, we have Dale Earnhardt Jr. Dale Jr. picked up 26 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 149 top 5s, had 260 top 10s, led 8,234 laps, and was a 2-time Daytona 500 winner in 2004 and 2014. Many people in NASCAR expected him to live up to his father, Dale Sr. And while he didn't live up on the numbers, Dale Jr. lived up in a lot of different ways. He's a NASCAR Hall of Famer, and he's to many people Redneck Jesus. Because Dale Jr. has not only done a lot for the short track scene, but Dale Jr. in general, really popular, but also super successful. I mean, his first year in Cup had 2 wins during that year. Then in 2001, had a 3-4 win season. And people forget, 2004, he was a championship threat. In 2003, I believe, finished 2nd or 3rd in the points that year. In 2004, had it not been for some things that happened in the chase, he would have probably been the champion. He had a 6-win year during that year. And in 2014 was a big resurgent year for Dale Jr. after some years where he struggled. 2014 had a 4-win season. Had it not been for the Final 4 rules we had, Dale Jr. might have a shot to win the championship that season. Because he won at Martinsville, swept Pocono that year, and got a win at Daytona. Then 2015 won 3 races. Daytona, Talladega, and his final win coming at Phoenix. But everything he's done on the inside and outside, he's had such a massive and huge impact on the history of the sport, in the history of the garage as well on top of that. And Dale Jr. is still around in the sport. I mean, he's had his team now in the Cup Series. They made the Daytona 500 twice now with Justin Allgaier, and there's always rumors about whether his team is going to be in the Cup Series down the road. But Dale Jr., I think, was a great driver with DEI of Hendrick Motorsports. Sure, like I said, he had a stretch of years from 2007 to basically 2009 to 2011, where he didn't win, had the dark ages, but when Steve Letarte came in to be the crew chief, things improved and got a lot better, and Dale Jr. improved, and like I said, was able to win a lot of races in the Cup Series. In the number 32 position, we have Rex White. Rex White picked up 28 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, won the 1960 NASCAR Cup Series Championship, had 110 top 5s, had 163 top 10s, and led 4,850 laps. Now, Rex White never won any big races, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Rex White for many years had a distinction of being the youngest, or one of the youngest, NASCAR Cup Series champions. He was super successful in the early days, in the late 1950s and the early 1960s. And Rex White did a lot of this in the early stages. I think Rex White was only around for maybe around 10 or 11 years, retired, I believe, in the mid to late 1960s, and to basically have a career that he did, I think that's honestly impressive. Rex White, someone who's one of the 75 greatest drivers of all time. I think he's been inducted into in fact, I actually believe he's been inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame as well due to that championship. I think got inducted around 2014 to 2016 range, was part of one of the original classes of the NASCAR Hall of Fame because he was just really good. Also, I believe, was a convertible champion in the history of the sport as well and won some championships in the West and East Coast on top of that. So I think Rex White being a champion, historic, brought a lot of historical context to the sport, and I think Rex White was super good and super successful in the way that he raced and how he ended up winning a lot in the sport. In the number 31 position, we have cousin Carl Edwards. Carl Edwards picked up 28 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 124 top 5s, had 220 top 10s, led 6,136 laps, was a 2015 Coca-Cola 600 winner and the 2015 Southern 500 winner as well. Carl Edwards also was inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame for the class of 2025, which I think he's earned that right. Carl Edwards is one of the 5 or 6 best drivers in history of the sport to never win a NASCAR Cup championship. And Carl Edwards came very close many years to winning that Cup Series championship. I think about 2005, where he tied for second the championship in his rookie season, technically, even though he wasn't eligible for the Rookie of the Year that year, he still technically tied for second with Gray Biffle in the standings. Then 2008, finished second to Jimmy Johnson, had most wins during that season. Then 2011, most consistent guy most of the year, but got beat by Tony Stewart. And then in 2016, was in position to win the championship, only to get turned by Joey Logano in his final full-time year. In recent years, Carl Edwards has come back to the sport being an analyst for Amazon, and there's always been talk, will Carl Edwards ever return to have the closeout? Because I think many of us would love to see Carl have some closure and do a one-off. But Carl was just a great driver. Also won the O'Reilly Championship in 2007. One of the around 42 drivers who won races in all 3 series. The signature backflip on top of that, one of the most signature things of Carl Edwards' NASCAR career. He was very popular, very well liked. Yes, he had some controversy over the years, but who didn't have controversy over the years? At the end of the day, Carl Edwards, a great driver in the 2000s, and was in a very competitive field and nearly won championships in a very competitive and a very strong field. In the number 30 position, we have Dale Jarrett. Dale Jarrett picked up 32 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, won the 1999 NASCAR Cup Series Championship, had 163 top 5s, had 260 top 10s, led 7,053 laps, had 3 Daytona 500 wins in 1996, 2000, and 1993, won 2 Brickyard 400 victories in 96 and 99, and won the 1996 Coca-Cola 600 as well. Became only the second driver in history to have wins of 3 different crown jewels in the same year. Dale Jarrett had a tale of 2 careers. The first part of Dale Jarrett's career did not go very well. He went back down to O'Reilly and had a second chance. Then he won a race with Wood Brothers in 1991, and his career went on from there and went on to have a super successful and great career and was really dominant in the 1990s. The mid to late 1990s with Todd Perry, that duo was so strong and very, very good. And he had a lot of success up until around 2003, where things started kind of falling off a bit. But in 2005, picked up a win at Talladega, finishing the top 15 in points. Dale Jarrett, just in general, was consistent. Wasn't a driver that got in a lot of beefs, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind on a lot of things when it came to safety, among other things as well. Dale Jarrett was very heavily regarded, well respected by many in the garage, well respected to this day, still works at NBC, back with NBC and USA next week. I think Dale Jarrett could have won more. I think he had the potential to win more races, but he's a champion of the sport, a NASCAR Hall of Famer on top of that, and again, just a legend of the motorsports world with a Cup championship and winning a lot of races in his time, and the best of the Jarrett family, outside of his father, but the best of son of the Jarrett family as well. In the number 29 position, we have Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is one of the few active drivers this high on the list. Kyle Larson right now has 32 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. He is a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion in 2021 and 2025. He has 142 top fives, 215 top 10s, has led 10,999 laps led, so he's one lap away from reaching 11,000 laps led. Won the 2021 Coca-Cola 600, won the 2023 Southern 500, and won the 2024 Brickyard 400. Kyle Larson, ever since getting the Hendrick Motorsports, has been dominant. He was good from the get-go, right? Going back to his rookie year, and then 2016 winning at Michigan. Then 2017 being a championship threat during that season, one of the strongest contenders against Martin Truex Jr. during that year. Kyle Larson has been one of the best drivers. Now, yes, I know it's been over 45 races, and Kyle Larson picked up a win in the NASCAR Cup Series, but Kyle Larson was just so dominant. It's been so dominant. He's one of the winningest drivers in the last 5 to 6 years, and one of the winningest drivers of this decade as well. And I think Larson will be getting back to victory lane and moving higher. By the time I do this list next time, you never know. He could be a top 25 driver all time. Could win multiple races. I think many people look at him to potentially be a championship contender this year. Probably not going to happen. But Larson has won everything except the Daytona 500. And I think he's going to win a Daytona 500 in the near and not so distant future, because I think he's got the potential to do that. So Larson's going to continue moving up to the rankings. A top 30 driver all time. Probably going to be top 20, 25 by the end. 32 career wins, has had a very solid and great career, and a future Hall of Famer as well. In the number 28 position, we have Fireball Roberts. Fireball Roberts picked up 33 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 93 top 5s, had 122 top 10s, led 6,369 laps, won the 1962 Daytona 500, and he had 2 Southern 500 wins. Fireball Roberts is another driver that's a big what if, because his career unfortunately got cut short, and unfortunately after dying in a crash and fire in the 1964 Coke 600, that was where fire suits would end up being mandated from that point going forward. Fireball Roberts was a legend of the late 50s and the early 60s. And in my opinion, had it not been for what happened in 64, he would have been a Cup Series champion. He had potential to do that. He was a great driver in this sport. One of the early pioneers that was a superstar on top of that, and won a lot of big races in his career. One of the first drivers to win multiple Southern 500s. Nearly won the Coke 600 multiple different times. I mean, that 1964 race that Jim Bichelle won, that was a race that unfortunately Fireball Roberts lost his life in tragedy. But Fireball was so good in the 60s that he's already a NASCAR Hall of Famer. It was just great in his day in the sport, a legend of motorsports, and again, a NASCAR Hall of Famer. I think got inducted in 2014 or 2015. Just a great person, great race car driver, 33 wins, and was one of the best drivers of the early era in the early days of the sport as well. In the number 27 position, we have Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. has 34 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, was a 2017 NASCAR Cup Series champion, had 147 top 5s, had 291 top 10s, led 12,747 laps, had 2 Coke 600 wins in 2016 and 2019, and won the 2016 Southern 500. Martin Truex Jr.'s story is a term of 2 careers. First part of Martin Truex Jr.'s career, he did not have a ton of success. In the first 7-8 years of his Cup career, Martin Truex Jr. only won 2 races, once in 2007 at Dover and in 2013 at the race at Sonoma. After that, though, 2015 is where things began snowballing, and then he went on to win a championship a few years after that and was successful with Joe Gibbs Racing up until the second to last year of his career, where he won the regular season title in 2023. Martin Truex Jr. went from having a career of being a bust to being one of the best drivers of the modern era. and will be a future NASCAR Hall of Famer. He'll have the potential to get inducted in the Hall of Fame in the next couple of years. And I think with that question, should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, because he's been active in the sport a little bit with the commentary side of things. There were rumors of him maybe making more starts in NASCAR. Obviously, that hasn't happened. Martin Truex Jr., a great driver in the modern era, and will be a first ballot Hall of Famer with that question, not just for the championship, but with the wins he's had in the sport as well. In the number 26 position, we have Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch picked up 34 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 2004 Cup Series champion, had 161 top 5s, had 339 top 10s, led 10,292 laps, was a 2017 Daytona 500 champion, and the 2010 Coca-Cola 600 champion as well. Kurt Busch, in my opinion, is probably the most underrated driver in NASCAR, period. He had a very tumultuous career, had a lot of tempers, had a lot of anger throughout the early portion of his career, but he calmed down and became one of the biggest voices in the garage. Think about all the teams he had success with. Roush had success with Penske, won with Stewart-Haas Racing, won with Chip Ganassi Racing, won with 2311, nearly won with Phoenix Racing in 2012 in multiple different instances, nearly won Furniture Racing in 2013, won with a lot of different teams in his career, and also got Kyle Busch Motorsports only winning the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Kurt Busch was a legend of NASCAR. And even to this day, still race like IROC and the NASCAR Legend stuff. But Kurt Busch also was just inducted to the Hall of Fame about a year ago, and it was well-deserved because of how great he was. I know we're still thinking about Kurt right now with the unfortunate tragedy of his brother, but at the end of the day, I think Kurt Busch is one of the most successful drivers we have probably seen in the history of the last 25 years. And he was in such a dominant and great era of the sport where many of the greats we're going to be talking about were here. But Kurt Busch is just a strong driver in history with 34 career Cup wins and a champion on top of that as well in the NASCAR Hall of Famer. In the number 25 position, we have Bobby Isaac. Bobby Isaac picked up 37 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 1970 NASCAR Cup champion, had 134 top 5s, had 170 top 10s, and led 13,210 laps in the NASCAR Cup Series. Bobby Isaac was dominant force in the late 60s and the early 70s. And he probably could have won multiple championships in the early 1970s as well. He was such a dominant force. That championship in 1970, I think he had like double-digit wins during that year. And that was during a year where they still had a lot of races during that time. But that was about the time they were starting to condense the length of the schedule. And he still went on to have a very successful career. Bobby Isaac and that 71 team with Harry Hyde being the crew chief on that car, that duo was a deathly combination. They were so dominant during their time. And in so many different ways, just had a lot of success, right? And that's where Bobby Isaac is remembered because of the domination of the late 60s and the early 70s. And like I said, went on to have a ton of success, winning 37 races, being one of the best drivers in the history of the NASCAR Cup Series as well. In the number 24 position, we have Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski, another active driver in the NASCAR Cup Series to this day. With 36 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, won the 2012 NASCAR Cup Championship and a 2010 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series Championship, has 163 top 5s, 282 top 10s, has led 9,955 laps, just 45 laps away from joining the elite class around third 25 drivers, won 10,000 laps slim, won the 2018 Southern 500 and the 2018 Brickyard 400, and was a 2020 Coca-Cola 600 winner. The only race he needs to win to complete the Crown Jewel sweep is winning the Daytona 500, which he's come very close to winning, especially of how good he's been at super speedways. Brad Keselowski was very strong in the 2000s. That's where he dominated with Penske. From 2011 all the way to 2021 around there, he was super dominant with Penske. That's where his domination came from. He also did get a win with the RFK Group in 2024. And got a win with Phoenix Racing in 2009. But 2011 had a 3-4 win season. Even had an injury. 2012 had a 4-5 win season, won the championship. 2013 got a win. 14 had 5 or 6 wins around there, I'm pretty sure. 2015 got a win. 2016 had 4 wins during that year. 2017 got like 3 wins during that season, made the Final Four that year. Brad Keselowski in general was just a very solid and great driver, and still a great driver to stay, but not only a great driver, an outspoken voice in the garage as well. And I think if RFK can get it together, Brad can win more, because he's not only going to be a great driver, but he's also going to be a great car owner, has developed a lot of young drivers on top of that, and I think Brad's been a great driver for the history of NASCAR Cup competition as well. In the number 23rd position, we have Joey Logano. Joey Logano has 38 career NASCAR Cup Series victories. He has 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships, in 2018, 2022, and 2024, has 178 top fives, has 308 top tens, has led 9,910 laps, and won the 2015 Daytona 500. I think some are going to disagree that moving Joey Logano this high up on the list. And I get that people are going to look at those championships, say that are fake championships that Joey Logano had. Even if you say that you don't really agree with the championships that Joey Logano has, Joey Logano is still one of the best drivers that we've seen. We all remember 2015, right? He had a 5-win season. And if not for the situation with Kenseth, he very likely would have been the guy to be for the championship because he would have won in the full season format around that time. Joey Logano has been a very solid driver. Yes, I know the last couple years for Logano have not been that good. We saw what he can do if you have a great car for it. North Wilkes are a prime example. Dominated, had the most laps ever led in a single race. And very likely this year, if things go right, he will be another driver that reached the 10,000 laps total. And he is a future first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think by the end of Logano's career, well, he probably won't get to like 50 or 55 wins. He probably can get 10 or 11 more wins. Probably get to 50 at this point in his career, which there's only like 15 drivers that have accomplished that. He'll be probably one of the next guys to get there and is very close to jumping up to 40 career wins. Only needs 2 more to do that. Logano's had a very strong and successful NASCAR Cup Series career. In the number 22 position, we have Tim Flock. Tim Flock won 39 career NASCAR Cup Series races, had 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships in the early days of the sport, had 102 top 5s, 139 top 10s, and led 6,939 laps in the NASCAR Cup Series. Tim Flock also is known for having a monkey in his car, that being Jocko Flocko. Tim Flock was super dominant. He was the best of the Flock family without question, being one of only about 25 drivers to nearly get the 40 career Cup Series wins. His domination, like I said, in the early 50s. He didn't win a Southern 500, but he was one of the first drivers to win multiple championships in the NASCAR Cup Series. And Tim Flock was just super successful, one of the patriarchs of the family, but one of the most successful drivers in the early days. And I think that Tim Flock, he's a NASCAR Hall of Famer, got inducted, I believe, in 2013 or 2014, I'm pretty sure. And it's because of all the success he had in the early days. He had just had a lot of success and was a lot of fun to be around in the early days. So congrats to him on a great career, as he had 39 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. In the number 21 position, we have Matt Kenseth. Matt Kenseth had 39 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, won the 2003 Cup Championship despite the fact he only had 1 win during that season, had 182 top 5s, had 331 top 10s, led 11,769 laps in the Cup Series, was a 2-time Daytona 500 champion in 2009 and 2012, won the 2000 Coast 600, his first career victory, and won the 2013 Southern 500 as well. Matt Kenseth had a very solid and really, really good career. He really took off, though, in the second half when he went to Joe Gibbs Racing. 2013 had an 8-win season. 2015 had a 5-win season. 2016, 2 wins. 2017 got a win. Matt Kenseth, up until his final full season, was a dominant force to begin with. Now, 2020 was just definitely an unfortunate situation. Didn't really have a shot after Larson got fired from what he said on an iRacing live stream. But Matt Kenseth was just great. And he also nearly won O'Reilly championships and was great in the O'Reilly series. Never won any truck races. But Matt Kenseth was just so dominant in the early days. He was so dominant with Roush. Got a lot of wins. 02 was super dominant during that time. And Matt Kenseth, in a nutshell, was one of the best drivers in the 2000s, and a super fast and a super competitive field. One of the first ballot Hall of Famers, got inducted, I believe, in 2023, which is justified considering how dominant he was during that time. And he just was so good from the get-go. I mean, 2000 got a win, just won every year except like 01 didn't win, but 04 got 2 wins. Yes, he had some down years in the late 2000s. Only got 2 wins basically from 2008 up until the end of 2010. But Matt Kenseth was very solid and had 39 career wins and is a first ballot Hall of Famer in history of the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 20 position, we have Buck Baker. Buck Baker picked up 46 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships, I believe, in 1954 and 1957, I'm pretty sure. Had 246 top 5s, had 372 top 10s, led 5,801 laps, and was a 3-time Southern 500 winner, and also won, I believe, in 1964 as well. Buck Baker was super dominant in the 50s and the early 60s as well. He was one of the best drivers in the early days, one of the first drivers to win multiple championships in the Cup Series, and was able to lead a family to a lot of success on top of that as well. And I think he did it with his own organization on top of that. He was super dominant from the get-go. I mean, he won races, I think, as far back as like 1953. 1954, I think he had like a 10-11 win season around that point. He was just so dominant in the mid-1950s and the late 1950s, where I think he had multiple seasons with double-digit victories. Buck Baker, one of the drivers of the NASCAR Hall of Famer, got inducted, I believe, in 2014 or 2015 around there. It's because of all success he had in the early days of NASCAR Cup and NASCAR Cup competition on top of that as well. With 46 wins, one of only, I believe, around 45 drivers who've won 40 races. He's been very successful, was super successful in his day, and Buck Baker, one of the legends of the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 19 position, we have Bill Elliott. Bill Elliott picked up 44 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 1988 NASCAR Cup Series champion, had 175 top fives, had 320 top tens, led 11,413 laps, won 2 Daytona 500s in 1985 and 1987, won 3 Southern 500s in his career, including 1985 and 1994, and won the 2002 Brickyard 400. Bill Elliott, in my opinion, is kind of one of those what-if careers a little bit. What if Bill Elliott decided to not be a team owner and stuck to basically being in a car? Because we saw what he could do in the second half of his career. But Bill Elliott, we all remember the dominance. 1985, despite the fact he did win the championship, Bill Elliott in 85 had an 11-win season during that time. 84 had 2 wins, and then, of course, in 83, got his first win out of Riverside. But Bill Elliott had a ton of success. And in 1992, the year he joined up with Junior Johnson, around that time, he went on to have a multi-win season, won 4 races in a row, and had a 5-win season in 92, and barely lost the championship during that time. Then 94 got to victory lane at Darlington, and then he went to own his own team. But he was also known as $1 Million Bill. He was the first driver in the $1 Million program that Winston had, the Winston stuff had. He was able to win that $1 million bonus. And Bill Elliott was super dominant there. Then he goes and runs over Everham, and in 2001 through 2003, he wins multiple races. Wins Homestead in 01, in 02 had 2 wins at Pocono and the Brickyard 400, and then in 2003, went on to win in Rockingham in his final full season, nearly in his final full-time start, went on to win a race at Homestead 4 Flat Tire happened. Bill was super dominant in this sport for a very, very long time. Quiet and reserved, but very dominant in the 80s and 90s, and nearly won another championship in 89, finished second or third in the 89 season, nearly won multiple championships in the early 90s as well, and Bill was super dominant and super fast in his NASCAR Cup Series career. In the number 18 position, we have Mark Martin. Mark Martin, one of the highest drivers in this list to never win a championship, but had 40 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, had 271 top 5s, had 453 top 10s, led 12,879 laps, had 2 Southern 500 wins, and won the 2002 Coca-Cola 600. Mark Martin was among the best and was also one of the best drivers on the racetrack as well. In my opinion, probably the second best driver in history, you can argue, to never win a Cup Series championship. Mark Martin was dominant on the racetrack when he was in the right stuff. From the get-go, if Roush, he got a win in 89. Then in 1990, probably should have won the championship had it not been for that. But Mark Martin didn't have just 1. Didn't have 2. Didn't have 3. Didn't have 4. He had 5 times in his Cup career where he finished second and didn't win the championship. 02 was in position to win it. Lost it to Tony Stewart. 94, lost it that year to Dale Sr., finished second in the championship there. Then 98, y'all remember how dominant Mark was with 7 wins. Jeff Gordon was even more dominant with 13 wins. Mark Martin was in an era of domination. And Mark Martin, to me, is still to this day well-respected. And many people look up to Mark Martin in the garage because of how great he is, how much advice he gives, and is just one of the best drivers to ever grace it. I mean, his final year, his final dominant year of 2009 was 50. There's not many that can say they're 50 and they're dominant. Mark Martin actually could have realistically won the championship in 2009 had it not been for the flip at Talladega that year because he was actually running Jimmy Johnson down at the end of that season in the points. Mark, though, was fantastic, a great driver, and actually won an O'Reilly race in 2013. We got to remember this. Mark Martin really won a few races and won a lot of poles during that time, so he's good even up until his mid-50s. So very rare to see that. Mark was great and very, very solid as well. In the number 17 position, we have Herb Thomas. Herb Thomas picked up 48 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. He had 2 championships, I believe either first or second driver in NASCAR history to win multiple championships. Had 122 top 5s, had 156 top 10s, led 6,970 laps, and had 3 Southern 500 wins. I believe the first driver to win 3 Southern 500s. Herb Thomas was a dominant force in the early to mid 1950s. Didn't win any races past, I believe, 57 or 58. All of his success really came in the early days of the sport, which is why he was able to win 2 championships in the early days of the sport on top of that. And Herb Thomas also, I believe, is a NASCAR Hall of Famer as well. In fact, I believe everyone outside a few that are not have been inducted in yet are inducted in NASCAR Hall of Fame. But Herb also, I believe, is also a convertible series champion, which winning in that series, kind of like the O'Reilly series a little bit in a sense, was also his own separate thing that was going on. His cars were different in that series compared to what we had in the Cup Series. He had a strictly stock series, I think, going on when he won championships. Won in multiple different styles of racing, was strictly stock from another stuff. Herb was great in the 50s and one of the best drivers in the early days of the NASCAR Cup Series as well. In the number 16 position, we have Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart picked up 49 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 3 championships, the first 3-time champion on this list, had 187 top 5s, had the second one I should say, had 308 top 10s, led 12,815 laps, and was a 2-time Brickyard 400 winner. Tony Stewart was not well known for winning a lot of crown jewel races, but Tony Stewart also was one of the few drivers on this list that hasn't won a Daytona 500 on the higher status of the list. Tony Stewart was an amazing driver right from the get-go. He is also the only IndyCar champion to be a Cup Series champion. And he's also one of the only car driver owners we have seen in the Cup Series in recent years as well. Tony Stewart, like I said, championships in 2002, 2005, and 2011. Tony Stewart was always a championship threat. His first year from the get-go finished 4th in the standings with 3 wins, the most wins before Shane Van Gisbergen took that crown. He was the first driver to have 3 wins in a season as a rookie. Then 2000 had a 6-win season. 01 had a 3 to 4 win season. 02 had a 3 to 4 win season, went on to win the championship. 03 had multiple wins. 04 had 2 or 3 wins. 05 had a 5 to 6 win season, went on to win the championship with Joe Gibbs Racing. And Tony Stewart was just super good every year. Unfortunately, his career kind of came to an end a little bit after some injuries and some personal stuff happened around 2014. But in his final season in 16, he picked up a win. And 2011 just was dominant in the chase with 5 wins in the final 10 races. Tony Stewart to this day is still racing things. NHRA has come back and made a start in NASCAR. Tony Stewart was just a dominant force and a force we reckon with every single week on the track. He was a dominant force in the 2000s and a great era. But I think Tony Stewart could have won a lot more races had things gone better in the right direction for him. In the number 15 position, we have Junior Johnson. Junior Johnson is the first driver on the list to break the 51 total with 50 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. Had 121 top 5s, had 148 top 10s, led 13,021 laps, and won the 1960 Daytona 500. Junior Johnson was a force to be reckoned with in the late 50s, but mainly the 60s. His domination in the sport came in the early to mid 1960s, and his second winningest driver on this list, but has not won a Cup Series title. But Junior Johnson, while maybe not being a champion as a driver, he was a champion as a car owner, as he went on to win a lot of championships with the likes of Darrell Waltrip, nearly won championships with Terry Labonte, won races with Neil Bonnett, had others in the team, but just had a lot of success, won championships, I think, with Cale Yarborough maybe around that time. And in general, Junior Johnson was super successful in many, many different ways. And he always was dominant on the racetrack when he raced. So he knew how to race. Dominant North Wilkes won races there. Basically, his team owned that track over the years. Junior Johnson, one of the greats, NASCAR Hall of Famer, part of the inaugural class of the Hall of Fame in 2010 because of what he did in the sport and history. And one of the first drivers to reach 50 wins. Very rare back in the day to get to 50 wins. Now you have a lot of drivers who reach that number. He's one of the drivers on the list with 50 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. In the number 14 position, we have Ned Jarrett. Ned Jarrett also picked up 50 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, had 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships in 1961 and 1965. Had 185 top 5s, had 239 top 10s, led 10,358 laps, and was a 1965 Southern 500. So to this day, the largest margin of victory in NASCAR Cup Series history. Ned Jarrett retired way too early, in my opinion. If Ned Jarrett had not retired as early as he did after accomplishing everything he wanted to accomplish, had he not retired as early as he did, Ned Jarrett more than likely is winning more championships and probably would have been the greatest driver in NASCAR history on the wins total. He probably could have won more races than 50. He probably would have gotten 100 plus probably in his career. But for Ned Jarrett, it wasn't always just a great race car driver, a great broadcaster on top of that with, MRN, with ESPN, with ABC, with CBS, with all the network providers. He was with a lot of different networks over the years, and was a great provider on that, providing a lot of great analysis, providing a lot of attention to detail, a lot of different areas. Ned Jarrett was a dominant force to be reckoned with 50 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, a dominant force and a great driver on the racetrack and well-respected in and out of the garage as well, as that's why he's called Gentleman Ned Jarrett. And rest in peace to Ned Jarrett, by the way. In the number 13 position, we have Lee Petty. Lee Petty picked up 54 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships, one of the first drivers in NASCAR history to win 3 Cup Series championships, had 231 top 5s, had 332 top 10s, led 5,369 laps, and was a 1959 Daytona 500 winner, the inaugural winner of the 500, which took a few days to get done at that particular point. Lee Petty, of course, the patriarch of one of the legendary families, the Petty family, and one of the only families on this list to have 3 drivers of that family basically be on there. Lee Petty obviously was a great legend and a great pioneer of the sport as well. He won championships basically in the early days. And if not for getting kicked out early around 1950 to 51, Lee Petty would have been a champion around the 1950 season. He was so dominant right from the get-go in the early days and was very, very good. Unfortunately, his career came to a close in 1961 in Daytona 500 qualifying around that time. Did make a few starts after that, but was never really the same from that point. But the Pioneer days was a legend and very well respected by many in the garage on and off the racetrack. It was just so dominant. I mean, when you think about legendariness of the early days, one of the greatest Hall of Famers, 54 career Cup Series wins, was just so dominant during that time and was just really good. I mean, he was a big reason we got Richard Petty, and he really helped a lot in that way. So he was a legend of the early days of NASCAR and one of the legends of the early days of the history of the sport as well. In the number 12 position, we have Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace picked up 55 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 1989 NASCAR Cup Series champion, had 202 top 5s, had 349 top 10s, won 19,951 laps led, and his only crown jewel win in the NASCAR Cup Series was a 1990 Coca-Cola 600 victory. Rusty Wallace is not known for winning a lot of the flashiest races in Cup history. He's also a driver never won a super speedway race in his Cup career, but Rusty Wallace always won a lot at short tracks. He dominated Bristol Motor Speedway and dominated the short track scene for many years. He's one of the winningest drivers in history of Richmond Raceway, one of the winningest drivers in history of Martinsville. His last one, of course, came in Martinsville in 2004, but was also good at super speedway style tracks or bigger tracks. Won at Auto Club once or twice, really good at Michigan a couple times. I remember back in 1993, he had a 10-win season around that point in 1993, but lost a championship during that season. When he joined the Penske Group, he was super dominant around that time. It was just legendary in that part of the sport. It was just so dominant in the 80s and the 90s of Raymond Beadle, and this won a lot of races in that day. Had a lot of really good crew chiefs, worked with Robin Pemberton for many years, worked with Buddy Parrott. Buddy Parrott was a big reason we saw the resurgence of Rusty in 93 after struggling a lot in 92. He was so dominant in the 93 season with Buddy Parrott. He just had a ton of success in his career in the early days. And Rusty Wallace also was very good and also a pretty good broadcaster on top of it as he continues. I mean, there was even talk he was going to come back. Obviously, that's not happening at this point with him being a lot older at the moment. But Rusty was a legend of the late 80s and the early 90s of the sport. He was one of the best drivers in the early days of NASCAR Cup history and competition as well. In the number 11 position, we have Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick had 60 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, was a 2014 NASCAR Cup champion, the only Cup championship he had, though he had 2 O'Reilly Auto Parts championships, had 251 top 5 finishes, had 444 top 10 finishes, led 16,058 laps, was a 2007 Daytona 500 winner, won 3 Brickyard 400s in 2003, 2019, and 2020, won 2 Coke 600s in 2013, and I believe in 2011, and 2 Southern 500 victories in 2014, and also 2020 as well. Kevin Harvick was dominant. He had 2 careers. One, very solid, but not spectacular. The second part of it with SHR was dominant. With RCR had 23 wins, and most of his crown jewel victories came during that time with RCR. But when he got to Stewart-Haas Racing, he was dominant. 2014 first year he goes there, goes on to win the championship. 2015, 16, every year after that, has a lot of multi-win seasons. 2018 has an 8-win season. 2019 has a 4 to 5 win season. 2020, the year he probably should have won the championship, 9 wins, loses it because of a stupid format that NASCAR had, and probably should have been a multi-time champion in the sport. Kevin Harvick was amazing. One of the greatest ever do it in NASCAR, and getting inducted in the Hall of Fame this year along with Jeff Byrne, which I think is a right and justified call for Kevin to be inducted, because what Kevin Harvick did behind the wheel, he still is, of course, in the sport as a broadcaster. I genuinely believe Kevin Harvick, though, could have won a lot more races had he started off with SHR. He probably could have gotten closer to Dale Sr. on the win total. I genuinely believe that, because he won 2 races in 2001 and was good every year from that point. Kevin dominated, though. There were struggles for RCR, especially in like 09 and 2008 and all that. But at the end of the day, Kevin Harvick had a really strong career and one of the greatest drivers to hit the track every single week. In the number 10 position as we reach top 10, we have Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin currently has 64 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, has 260 top 5s, 390 top 10s, has led 17,196 laps, is a 3-time Daytona 500 winner, one of only 3 or 4 drivers who's reached 3 Daytona 500 wins, has 3 Southern 500 victories, and was a 2022 Coca-Cola 600 winner. The only thing missing from Denny Hamlin's trophy case is winning the championship. This year right now, though, I think it's very likely Hamlin's going to win the championship. He's such on a roll right now and good at everything. But his dominance this year has moved him up. The crazy thing about the longevity of Denny Hamlin has had such a massive longevity in the history of the sport. He has been in NASCAR now for over 20 years in Cup, and he only seems to get better. He's on track to have a career year, not just only in wins, but also in laps led on top of that. He's led nearly 900 laps this year, and his dominance cannot be mistaken at this particular point. Now, Denny Hamlin, I don't think he's going to catch Earnhardt. I don't think he's going to surpass others at this point. But getting to 70 wins is certainly possible. Just the domination from Denny Hamlin, though, has honestly been incredible. And everything he's done as a driver up to this point has been fabulous, phenomenal, and incredible. I think he's a top 10 all-time driver. I think by the end of his career, he's going to be in that top 8, top 9 range. Gets a championship, he'll be closer to Earnhardt and all those guys. I think Denny Hamlin is one of the best drivers ever raced in the Cup Series. In the number 9 position, we have Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch picked up 63 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, had 2 championships in 2015 and 2019, had 254 top 5s, 394 top 10s, led 19,486 laps, was a 2008 Southern 500 winner, won 2 Brickyard 400s, and won the 2018 Coca-Cola 600. We all know, sadly, though, earlier this year, we lost Kyle Busch, one of the greatest drivers to ever race in NASCAR. He dominated the late 2000s and the early to mid 2010s. First year he goes to Joe Gibbs Racing, 8 wins. Wins Southern 500 during that year. Then 2009 falls off a bit, still had 4 wins. 2010, Mesa Chase has 3 to 4 win season. 2011, multiple wins. 2012, only gets 1 win, struggling season. 2013, Gen 6, dominates. 14 gets 1 win. Then from 15 on after the injury, he just dominates sport for about 5 or 6 years. Yes, the last couple years for Kyle Busch have been great, but he then in 23 goes to RCR, has a 3-win season. Then things have not been working out as well, or had not been working out very well for Kyle. But before the unfortunate passing, Kyle Busch has turned the corner. He won a truck race, and things were getting better for Kyle over at Rich Schultz Racing. I think Kyle Busch would have won a race this year and would have won more races in Cup had things gone better. And, unfortunate stuff happened, sadly. But I think we all remember Kyle Busch. He could be inducted this year. He's one of the greatest drivers ever raced in NASCAR, period. And we're going to remember Kyle Busch for what he did on the racetrack. Multi-time champion, truck owner champion as well. Just did so many fabulous and amazing things as a driver on the track. A great father, a great race car driver, and one of the best ever raced in the NASCAR Cup Series. In the number 8 position, we have Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough picked up 83 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, is a 3-time NASCAR Cup champion, 1975, 1974, 1975, 1976. I think that's what it is, or 1975 or 77. He is 1976 or 78, I should say. First driver to win 3 championships in a row. Had 255 top 5s, had 319 top 10s, led 31,556 laps. Was one of only 2 drivers to have at least 4 Daytona 500 wins, and is a 5-time Southern 500 winner. Cale Yarborough was dominant in the 60s and the 70s as well. His performance was absolutely incredible during that time, and even the 1980s where he won his final race in the mid to late 1980s. He had a longevity career from the late 50s to the early to mid 1980s, and he was just super dominant during that time. And again, you think about what he did in the 70s with Junior Johnson's organization, what he did with the 28 car of Harry Ranier's team, winning a Daytona 500 in a backup car, basically a car that was taken from a Hardee's parking lot as a car that was basically being used as a display car, and took that car to victory lane after crashing. Cale Yarborough was around as a legend and was a beast on the track. He was also part of the iconic moment of the 1979 Daytona 500, one of the most iconic and classic moments we have seen in recent memory of the sport. And Cale Yarborough, like I said, was just absolutely one of the most dominant forces, one of the greatest drivers in the history of the sport, and we'll remember for many years to come. Remember by many as one of the best to ever do it. Many people put him in the Mount Rushmore. I don't put him in the Mount Rushmore, honestly, but I do think that Cale Yarborough was an absolute legend and a beast on the racetrack every single year. In the number 7 position, we have Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison picked up 85 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. Was a 1983 Cup Series champion, the oldest champion in Cup Series history, 336 top 5s, 449 top 10s, led 27,556 laps, was a 3-time Daytona 500 winner in 1978, 1982, and 1988, was a 4-time Southern 500 winner, and a 3-time Coca-Cola 600 winner. Bobby Allison was dominant from the late 1960s all the way to the early to mid 1980s. In fact, in his final full-time season, he won the Daytona 500 in 1988 before his career ended in a really bad crash. Bobby Allison, though, was so dominant in his day of the sport, including in the mid to late 1970s and in the early 80s on top of that, when he was competing against Darrell Waltrip at an older age for championships. Competing at some of the biggest levels, winning at every major crown jewel that he could have won. Had he been young enough, he could have honestly ran the Brickyard 400 and probably had a shot to win that too. I remember what, I wasn't gonna lie, but basically many people remember what he did. He helped Buick get to victory lane quite a few times. And on top of that, when I think of Bobby Allison, I think of someone who's absolutely a legend and can get the best out of equipment every time he would get behind the wheel, and just won a lot of different things and won a lot of major races in his racing career. So legend of the sport, one of the best to ever do it, 85 career wins, nothing to slouch over, nothing to be ashamed of, just legendary and fantastic, great numbers across the board. 85 wins is absolutely incredible, just absolutely Pandoric and amazing, just a legendary career in motorsports with 85 wins, just legendary and a very big success, and just one of the best drivers ever raced in the history of the sport, and a legend of NASCAR Cup competition who basically did a lot of great things. In the number 6 position, we have Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip picked up 84 career wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, won 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships in 1981, 1982, and 1985, had 276 top 5s, had 390 top 10s, led 23,134 laps, won the 1989 Daytona 500, won the 1992 Southern 500, and was a 5-time Coca-Cola 600 winner, one of the winningest drivers in history, and I believe actually still to this day, the winningest driver in the history of the Coca-Cola 600. What a dominant time for Darrell Waltrip in the sport. Darrell Waltrip, especially in the late 1970s and the early 80s in particular, was dominant. He was known for being dominant, though, at one track, that being Bristol Motor Speedway. He had a stretch of 8 or 9 races in a row, I believe, where he went on to win a race and didn't lose. And they couldn't stop him at that track. Darrell Waltrip has double-digit wins at that track. He was good at other tracks, really good at tracks like, for instance, Martinsville, won a lot of races there, including in his time at Hendrick Motorsports. And again, being a Daytona 500 winner, he won at Talladega multiple different times. Darrell Waltrip was not only someone that was a talker, but also a legend. Now, Darrell Waltrip in the early ages of his career was not one of the most well-liked and respected drivers. He's someone that talked a lot, and many people didn't like Darrell Waltrip for that in the industry, and really fans did not like that attitude that he had. But you can't deny that Darrell Waltrip having that attitude led to having a ton of success and being one of the best drivers in the history of NASCAR Cup Series competition. And Darrell Waltrip having 84 wins is nothing to slouch over. It's one of the best drivers ever do it, as a matter of fact, and one to have one of the most legendary careers in motorsports in general. So he had a great career with 84 career wins, active on the broadcasting side for many years, and was super successful on the broadcasting side on top of that as well. In the number 5 position, we have David Pearson. David Pearson had 105 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, was a 3-time Cup Series champion, I believe in 1968, 1969, I believe, and 1965 around that point. Had 301 top 5s, 366 top 10s, 25,427 laps. Won the 1976 Daytona 500, was a 3-time Southern 500 winner, and a 3-time Coca-Cola 600 winner. You could argue that David Pearson, had he been able to run in every state, because one of the reasons that David Pearson did not end up winning more championships, because the reason the 3 years that he won championships were the only 3 years he ran full time. You could argue the reason that he didn't have more wins in his career and one more race than Richard Petty is because of the fact that Dave Pearson couldn't race in every state, because he was banned for multiple different states from racing in them. So he couldn't end up racing in all those states. But David Pearson was just a legend. His first win came in the Coke 600 in 1961, and his last one came in the Southern 500, I believe in 1980 or around 1981, I'm pretty sure. He won a lot of races in his career and won a lot of big events and was just legendary. He helped the Wood brothers have a ton of success in the 70s, got them their first or second Daytona 500 win, I'm pretty sure, and was just super, super dominant in every era from the 60s all the way to the 70s, and even good in the 80s on top of that as well. I think David Pearson, honestly, you could argue for some, the best that was out there. There's a lot of people who think he's the best. And while I think he's definitely one of the best, you got to remember the era too. The era was not as competitive as when he's around as some of the guys we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. Dave Pearson definitely had some competition during that time, like Richard Petty, Kel Yarborough, Bobby Allison, all those guys. But I think at the end of the day, David Pearson's top 5 for sure. You could argue he's on the verge of being a guy on that Mount Rushmore, which I certainly think there's an argument for that. He was a legend of the sport and a legend of motorsports, as I think he's without question one of the 5 best and one of the best ever raced in NASCAR Cup competition. In the number 4 position, we have Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon picked up 93 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, was a 4-time NASCAR Cup Series champion in 95, 97, 98, and 2001, had 325 top 5s, had 477 top 10s, led 24,926 laps, had 5 Brickyard 400 wins, the only driver with 5 Brickyard 400s, had 6 Southern 500 victories, and 3 Coco 600 wins. He is one of only about 7 or 8 drivers who's won every Crown Jewel, and I believe he's only a few drivers who won every Crown Jewel multiple different times. Jeff Gordon is one of the best drivers to ever race in the history of the sport. And if he had full season points, he'd be a 7-time champion. Jeff Gordon was a beast on the racetrack. Jeff Gordon from the get-go, 93 as a rookie, didn't win, 94 2 wins. Then 95 through about 2001, Jeff Gordon was dominant during that era. From 95 to 1999, Jeff Gordon won 40 races during that stretch, including 13 races in 1998, and in 1996 having a 10-win season. That stretch of races, he and Ray Abraham were a dominant force to be reckoned with for many years. But it didn't stop there. In 2001, when he got Robbie Loomis, he won a lot of races. Then 2002 or 2004, he had 4 or 5 wins. 05 had 3 or 4 wins, didn't make the chase that year, unfortunately. And then, of course, in 2007, had a 6-win season with Steve Letarte, and that was the last year he dominated. But in 2014, the second to last year, he went on to win basically 4 races and nearly made the Final 4, but got eliminated because of a bad move by Brad Keselowski. And then, of course, he went on to win 1 race in 2015 in his final run. Jeff Gordon, of course, still racing with IROC and all that stuff. I think that Jeff Gordon is the best driver that has never won 7 championships because his numbers were just impeccable. His numbers were just incredible, and his numbers were just fantastic and amazing in a nutshell. Jeff's one of the best ever do it, one of the best ever race in the sport, and one of the greatest race car drivers on the planet, and everything he touched, it turned to gold. In the number 3 position, we have Richard Petty. Richard Petty picked up 200 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series, 7 NASCAR Cup Series championships, 555 top 5s, 712 top 10s, 51,514 laps led, 7 Daytona 5 wins, the only driver with 7 Daytona 500s, 1967 Southern 500 winner, and 2 Coke 600 wins. Now, many people are going to be asking, how come, despite the fact Richard has the best stats in every category, including laps led, wins, everything, why do you have Richard Petty number 3 and not number 1? Well, the answer, very simple. The competition level. The 2 guys in front have more competition in field than Richard Petty had. Yes, Richard Petty, there's no denying Richard on the racetrack was a legend. And in my opinion, if you drop him outside of top 3, I disagree. I think championships especially then matter. Also, some of those championships, they were under different points formats. Points formats were a lot different, and you race a lot differently. You go for those big wins. Winning the Daytona 500 back then awarded so many big points. Winning Southern 500 awarded a lot of points. That's when you look at those championships that Richard had. Well, yes, he was great. I mean, 1967 had a 27-win season. I don't look at that as same, and I think it's so different you have to compare those eras, but I think Richard is third. I personally think the other two in front of him had better careers in a nutshell and was just legendary though. But Richard, like I said, he's a legend. He's one of the best to ever do it. There's no question about it. He is a top 5 driver, in my opinion, a top 3 driver. I think championships matter a lot in that era. He won them the way he did. One of the best ever race. Just my opinion is that he's not the best, but he's a top 3 driver all time, in my opinion. In the number 2 position, we have Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson has picked up 83 career NASCAR Cup Series wins. He is one of the 3 7-time champions, including winning the championship in 16, has 233 top 5s, had 375 top 10s, led 18,941 laps, 2 Daytona 5 victories in 06 and 13, 4 Coke 600 wins, 4 Brickyard 400 wins, and 2 Southern 500 wins in 2004 and 2012, getting Hendrick Motorsports their 200th win. Jimmie Johnson is one of the best, and maybe in my opinion, for some of you, probably the GOAT, because you look at the competition Jimmie Johnson had, he had many legends of the sport competing against him, and he had a dominant group that he had to go up against, and he was great. The reason I don't have a number 1 is, unfortunately, I'm taking the last years of Jimmie's career in connection, because I think the last years have hindered his career just a little bit from being, in my opinion, being the true GOAT of NASCAR. He's definitely, in my opinion, second. I think Jimmie was a legend, just great. He's still a legend to this day, and it's going to be awesome when he runs the Daytona 500 next year. He's going to have a chance and opportunity to run the number 48. But for me, I put him second because of the last 2 years. He hasn't won a race in over 7-8 years, and it's kind of similar like Bill Elliott's career, Terry Labonte's career. He lasted a little bit too long to continue being number 1, because if he retired, like I said, in like 18 or 19 and then come back and run part-time, though I don't think it really affects his legacy that much. But Jimmie Johnson, in my opinion, he's second all time. He's not number 1, but I think he's second best driver in the history of the sport. And the driver sitting in the number 1 position, and I think many of you expect this, is Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt had 76 wins, 7 Cup Series championships, had 281 top 5s, had 428 top 10s, did in 676 starts, 25,714 laps, won the 98 Daytona 500, won the 1995 Brickyard 400, 3 Southern 500s, and 3 Coco 600 wins. Many are going to be asking, why do I have Dale Earnhardt number 1? Look, I think I like Jimmie Johnson more than I like Dale Earnhardt, but let's be real and honest with ourselves. You have to look at multiple different things. Number 1, Dale Earnhardt defined NASCAR in a major, major way. Secondly, I think we all found out in recent years, Richard Childress Racing as an organization is not the best equipment. He could carry bad equipment and contend. 97, 98, during those years, some dark years for RCR, he still was a top 10 guy in the points and contended for championships. Even in 2000, when RCR was struggling with Mike Skinner, he was dominating and putting on just unbelievable and fantastic and amazing and spectacular performances. He was a legend and just unbelievable on the racetrack every time he got behind the wheel. And what he did, even in his final full season, he was great. And I think he would have won another championship. He would have been the first 8-time champion had he not passed away in the Daytona 500 crash. So my personal opinion is that while I think it'd been cool to see Jimmie the best, my personal opinion is Dale Earnhardt is the greatest Cup driver of all time. That's my opinion. I think he's the best driver ever graced sport, but I think he is without question the best driver to be a driver in the Cup Series, in my opinion. So that's for today's long video talk about Top 100. Now, actually, before I do go, I do want to make some honorable mentions because I forgot to mention this. There are some honorable mentions that I did forget to mention. So these are the drivers to me that are honorable mentions that did not make the cut for this year's list. Beginning with the first one that I did not mention. Let's start with a couple different individuals. Beginning with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I was very close to putting him in because of how dominant he's been, but also he hasn't had a lot of great runs, was why I didn't put him on her. I also mentioned Nelson Stacey. Early era, I don't take the early eras in much. Same with Billy Wade. Same with a couple other guys on this list. Now, Eric Jones, I was considering him, but he only got 3 wins, so I think that's not enough for me to put him in. Plus, he hasn't won in quite some time. Bubba Wallace, if he gets another win or two, he'll probably make the list because he's been around for quite some time now. At this point, I think a win is coming in the future. I'm already considering putting Corey Heim on the list because Corey Heim has 2 wins in the first 15 races, and he's going to win a lot of races. I was actually close to putting Heim in because of his dominance recently. AJ Allmendinger, well, he's got 3 wins, hasn't won in quite some time. And Elliott Sadler was considering as well because he did have 3 wins, but he also only had a few really good seasons in the history of the sport. But that's just my opinion on that side of things. So that is going to be for this year's edition of the top 100 greatest NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on so that when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to the more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Who are your top 100 greatest NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time? Let me know them in the comments below. Later today, if there's any other major news that breaks this evening, we'll discuss live on the channel. Tomorrow, we're going to have a news video discussing news over the course of the last couple days, talk about some of the track house stuff, talk about the news on Corey, I'm driving to 35, and some other stuff around that. And while some other videos drop, we're going to have probably 2027 O'Reilly silly season predictions dropping, and then Friday, some other stuff dropping like a news video. And then, of course, we'll have Cup silly season predictions for 28 dropping soon. Got a lot of content coming in. People like Haley Deegan, Shaven Gisborne, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Clear Savon, Dodge, Ram, Tony Stewart, Case King, Gray Biffle, Brad Gazossi, Corey Day, Corey LeJoy, Sanchez, Ross Chastain, Tony Stewart, Cletus Afaro, Dodge, Ram, Brad Gazossi, Clint Boyer, Chris Buescher, all that stuff, Corey Day, Corey all that. We'll talk about a lot of things on the channel in the coming days and weeks as well. Same as like I said, well, thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.